The following program is recorded with a 5-second delay. In the event of something truly horrific happening, the host has 5 seconds to calmly interrupt the flow of the stream and prevent the content from reaching your sensitive eyes and ears. Alas, the host has absolutely no clue whatsoever which buttons need pressing to abruptly halt the stream, so he will likely spend those precious moments screaming, "Oh my God, no, how could this have happened? Holy hell, oh my God, no, 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 why didn't I figure out how to fix? I knew this would happen, oh my God, I suck, damn it, damn it, damn it." Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the following program, Players Edition. That's right. Tonight, we are going to be doing another on-screen production live from New York State Courthouse, or ripped, I should say, from the transcripts from the New York State Criminal Courthouse in Lower Manhattan. In the case of the people of the state of New York versus Donald Trump, this is the transcript from May 20th. This is the third day of cross-examination of Michael Cohen, and it also is the day that the prosecution rests. I do not know if we're going to make it all the way through. I was thinking that I really want to share with you a part of the transcript that I'm worried we're not going to quite make it to. I was thinking about that. But before I do that, I got backstage 3 players who plan on joining me tonight. First and foremost, we're going to bring out here Mr. Ed Morrissey. Welcome to Good Lawgic in the following program. How are you, my brother?
Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. My pleasure and my privilege. And you were brought to me, courtesy of Sandy, who linked us up on X and said, I think Ed would be really good for this. She said you have a lot of professional experience that you can bring here to the role of Todd Blanche. So we're very excited about that. You are the managing editor of Hot Air, right?
I am managing editor of Hot Air, and yes, my professional experience is basically doing a bunch of podcasts. That's my professional experience. There you go.
Oh, there you go. Okay, and then we have Sandy here, and we also, I don't want to leave him backstage much longer. We have Janoski, who I think was following me since I had a completely brown beard. I think you've been a follower for a very long time, Janoski. Is that?
No, that is absolutely, yeah. I've been following you since Rittenhouse, and you just got on Locals.
Yeah. Well, anyhow, and Sandy, how long have you been around? How long have you been around? When did you discover me?
Rittenhouse.
Also, I knew you've been around a while. I didn't know that. I know it was the same time. All right, we'll just start this up here. Announcement to chat. Apologies on the undercooked barbecue squirrel last night. Chef is new. I know a few you were taken back when it ran off your. There's no squirrel mutilations here. Okay, I don't know. You can have your squirrel barbecues. I don't know, but there's definitely the following is not at all about squirrel mutilations. I'm sort of thinking about sharing with you guys the behind the scenes as to what happened. What happened after the courtroom got cleared? So, did you guys see the actual dialogue there, that exchange, like what Judge Merchan did?
No.
And everyone's very curious about it. Everyone's very well. You listened to it? You heard Dershowitz talk about it. Is that what you're saying?
No, Gavea did his dramatic reading.
Oh, Gavea did his dramatic. Yeah, he's great. He's great, Robert.
Yeah,
I love that guy. All right. Well, in case some of you did not see it, let's pull it up here, because I don't think we're going to get to it tonight, and I do want everyone to see exactly how everything went down in the courtroom there. So, I'm just gonna do a read without having you guys join on this part of the read, because I don't think we're gonna get there tonight. But let me just share this up here. All right. So this is this going to work here like this? That'll work. That's good enough. All right. So we're around. It was after there had been a whole bunch of objections sustained, and it was. And at a certain point, he said here, I'd like you to look at the second paragraph of that email. Do you see where the question of timing is premature? Yeah, I see that. What did you mean by that? Objection sustained. Geez, that was the word that set Judge Merchan off. He said he had the audacity to say, geez. Was that in response to something Mike Cohen had instructed you to do? Objection sustained. Yes, strike it. That's the witness saying, yes, strike it. And the court says, counsel, let's take a minute. Can the jury please step out? And he says, Mr. Costello, you remain seated, please. Remain seated. You may be seated. Mr. Costello, I'd like to discuss proper decorum in my courtroom. But I'm sorry, go ahead. I want to discuss proper decorum in my courtroom. Right? Okay. So when there's a witness on the stand, if you don't like my ruling, you don't say geez, okay? And then you don't say strike it, because I'm the only one that can strike testimony in the courtroom. Do you understand that? I understand. Okay. And then if you don't like my ruling, you don't give me side eye and you don't roll your eyes. Do you understand that? Do you understand that? Let me tell you, it was not a whisper when he said those two questions. It was not at all whisper. It was likely louder than what I just said. I wasn't there, but it likely was louder. I understand what you're saying. Okay, thank you. Let's get the jury back. Are you staring me down right now? No, I'm just wondering how. Clear the courtroom, please. Clear the courtroom. You want me to answer the question? Sir, please. Court officer jumps in, says, step outside, please. All is silent. It's like movie's over. Everyone leave. Everyone leave. Step out to the side, please. Step out, please. No one told the court reporter to stop typing. Step out, please. Quiet, please. Step out, please. Then you have random persons in the audience. This is great. You never see this on a transcript. I don't know how many transcripts I've read in my life, like depositions. You never see this. A person in the audience, because the court reporter is supposed to take down who's talking, and it's just some rando. Your Honor, that's from a half of the press. It's like, what? The press? The press is here? Your Honor, our lawyer is objecting. The press lawyer is objecting. We have a right to remain here. Step out, step out. Meanwhile, they're being pushed outside. This guy's like, hey, I want to speak on behalf of the press. Another person screaming in the audience, why? This is an open courtroom. What the hell's happening here? Well, they don't say that part. Any questions? Any and all questions will be answered in the hallway. Step out. So someone calls out, hey, the press lawyer has a question. Well, no, there's not an open forum. What do you mean it's not an open forum? It's exactly what this is. It's a courtroom. It's an open forum. It's not open forum. We'll answer all questions in the hallway. Please step out. This is Supreme Court courtroom. Step out. I don't know what that means when they say Supreme Court courtroom. Then another random person in the audience. This is an open courtroom. It's an open to the people, open to the public. You can't throw us out. Our lawyer has a question. This is a public forum. Wait, why do we need step out? Step out, please. Where do you want us to go? We're just people. Where do you want us to go? It's like you're shoving us out there. We got a little balcony out there. You haven't been inside the courtroom. There's a little balcony. No, it's actually on the 15th floor. I've been there. It's not a little balcony in that room. You're going to shove us all out into the hallway here. We're going to be standing. We're going to be all standing, like 100 of us standing out here in the hallway. Step out, please. Where do you want us to go? We have a lawyer here. I'm the lawyer. Hey, I'm the lawyer. So Lionel Hut steps up there. He wants to interject. Keep going, please. Back to the room. I'll answer all questions out in the hallway. I'll answer everything in the hallway. But right now, everybody step out. We're guests. Why do we have to leave? Step out. Everybody step out in the hallway. Let's go. Will this be on the record so we can read it afterwards? Step out, please. Step out, please. Everyone's finally gone. All right. Courtroom was clear of the audience. Not Alan Dershowitz. Apparently, they missed him. He was like sort of slinking there in a corner. I'm not here. I'm not really here. He like ducked down behind Trump or something. I don't know, because he said he was in the front row. All right, let the record reflect that it's now 5 after 4. Let the record also reflect, this is Mershan talking now. Let the record also reflect that the court officers had great difficulty clearing the courtroom because the courtroom was made up primarily of the press. I don't know what that means. Because it's made up of the press, like other people would. Yeah, in other words, they didn't want to leave because they sort of know a little bit about their rights. And I can appreciate that the press wants to be present for every part of these proceedings. Therefore, this record is not sealed. The press will have access to this record. I, as a member of the press, in case you may have forgotten, it's true. I, as a member of the press, now have access to this. Otherwise, you poor mooks, you have no chance of getting access. Only the press has access to it. Okay. The fact that I had to clear the courtroom and the court officers, including the captain, had great difficulty clearing the courtroom, and there was argument back and forth between the press and including counsel for the press, goes to why I had to clear the courtroom in the first place. It does? And that is, sir, your conduct is contemptuous right now. I'm putting you on notice that your conduct is contemptuous. If you try to stare me down one more time, I will remove you from the stand. You shall not pass. I will strike his entire testimony. Do you understand me? Yes, Judge, I understand. Listen to the question. Answer the question. Can I say something, please? No, this is not a conversation. Okay. All right. Is that an expletive deleted? Probably not. We can bring the press back in, please. So the reason he had to clear them out, this is what he said. I can't even understand what this means. The fact that I had to clear the courtroom and the court officers, including the captain, it goes to why I had to clear them out. And that is, sir, your conduct is contemptuous right now. Which I assume that's why he had to clear them out. He couldn't say that in front of the media. I'm not sure. Why can't you say that in front of them? I don't know why you can't say that in front of the media. You definitely should not say it in front of the jury. It's proper to clear the jury out so they don't realize how you feel about this guy. But I don't know what that has to do with anything at all. I don't know. But that's what happened when they left. That's what Dershowitz also reported. This is amazing. Like, so side eye now? Like, you have to control your facial reactions? I mean, I'm not going to kid you. I do see sometimes judges will like sort of feel like, I want to knock that smarmy look off your face. I haven't heard them say that, but they kind of act as if that's what they're trying to say. But yeah, this is Judge Mershan expressing some frustration. Let's just put it that way. I have frustration in that because I remember the New York bar. I sometimes feel precluded from expressing myself as I might like. But I give you all can figure out what I'm saying if you're intelligent. So there you go. Anyway, we're gonna start at the very top. We're the very top of this document.
Isn't that a violation of New York rules?
Well, what? In his courtroom, a judge has a lot of latitude. So, but which part? Do you think they cleared them out?
Yeah, wasn't that the point of them saying the lawyer for the press is objecting, is that you are not allowed to basically clear the courtroom during a proceeding? Objecting is that you are not allowed to.
I would say that it's not like there's an automatic right for an attorney to be heard whenever they damn well please. You sort of need to have, just because there's a lawyer who's not happy about it, that lawyer has no more rights than anyone else. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I mean, is this weird? It's a very weird situation, but the fact that there's a lawyer for the press there doesn't change anything at all. I'm a lawyer. I'm a lawyer for that. Well, I was a lawyer for the press when I represented Good Lawgic. I mean, what does that even mean? It doesn't. Why does a lawyer for the press matter more than a lawyer for Janowski? Everyone has an equal right to be in the courtroom. Now the court doesn't act that way. That's true. I mean, they seem to give deferential treatment to the press, which is in itself part of the elitism that frustrates so many people. But there's definitely under the law there's no distinction there between them. Anyway, for purposes of going forward, I think we expressed this backstage, but I'm not sure if I aired this for you all. We discussed our roles backstage, and we said that I tonight am going to be playing the role of Michael Cohen. Ed Morrissey, right below me here, is going to be playing the role of Todd Blanche, counsel for Donald Trump. Sandy will play the role of Miss Susan Hoffinger for the prosecution. That means every time you see object, you got to jump in there. I'm going to look for you to jump in, like cut off the question practically.
Enough.
All right, and Janoski, you're the quick trigger finger judge here, Judge Mershant. All right. Are we all ready, players? We all ready?
We are.
Ready.
Ready to go.
All right. Before I do that, one last thing I gotta do here. Master Phillips gifting 5 good Lawgic memberships. God bless you, King of Recruitment, Master Phillips, bringing in 5 new members to the fold. I tried pulling it up, and I missed who they were. But you 5 people, you know who you are. I know you know who you are. Part of being a member of the following is that you express gratitude to those people who share with you kindness. So I'm going to ask each of you to make sure you please kindly acknowledge the generosity of Master Phillips here. And part of the reason I'm explaining this is because the following is not at all a cult type of cult, but it is a gathering of like-minded individuals who care about greater community, unity, leadership training, as well as personal growth. And community and personal growth both tie in to expressing gratitude to someone who does right. So please make sure you do right by Master Phillips. And also, if you're new to the following, which some of you may be, some of you may not be, if you're new to the following,
Tracksuits.
I'm not the leader. I'm not the leader of the following. Say it with me. Joe is not the leader of the following. I cannot make that any clearer. Okay. Oh, and we got 5 more. These 5 I got. These 5 I'm pretty sure I caught these 5. Yeah, these 5 over here were brought in by A.K. Batusi. Those A.K.A. Batusi gave us design. I've seen design before. Tam Tam, I know you. Neurotic, I know you too. Cheat Chalker and Senile, all you gifted memberships in the following. God bless you, A.K.A. Batusi. That's a little horn blast for the 5 new people who were brought in here, courtesy of Mr. A.K.A. Batusi. Please remember that the following is not at all a cult type of cult. Not at all. I mean, seriously, think about it. There's no Kool-Aid. There's no spaceships. There's no tracksuits that are mandatory. There's mild farm work. There's no goat sacrifices. No squirrel mutilations. No dancing around bonfires in the middle of a forest while shucking off your children, your clothing to the beat of a tom-tom. There's no virgin sacrifices. No throwing anyone into volcanoes the way so many people are apt to do these days. The following is really just about community unity. And especially, you should know this of all people, Tam Tam. It's about personal growth, because Tam Tam is someone who actually specializes in that. All right. Let's get. Without further ado, we need to move forward. So let's. And oh my goodness, Paddock. I'm gonna come back to these later. I'm gonna come back to those later. We gotta get started. I gotta get moving. All right. We'll come back to you, Paddock. I'm forgetting about you. Clerk calling the people of the state of New York versus Donald J. Trump. Indictment 7154323. Appearances, please, starting with the people. Mr. Steinglass for the people. ADAs Joshua Steinglass, Susan Hoffinger, Becky Mangold, Matthew Colangelo, Christopher Conroy, Catherine Ellis, the dream team of Woke, and Mr. Blanche.
Todd Blanche, joined by Emil Bove, Susan Neschles, and President Trump seated to my left.
Good morning, Council. Good morning, Mr. Trump. First, I would like to thank you all for working out your schedule so that you could be here at 8:45. As you know, there are a couple of issues that came up over the weekend. I want to be able to address them before the jury got here, so they won't have to wait.
You know what? Screw that. I'm not going through his issues. He's got all his issues. I don't want to deal with it. He's got his own issues. I want to get to testimony. I apologize for cutting you off there. But I'm like, you know what? I want to get to testimony. I can't. The whole back and forth there. We all know what happened there. That can go on for pages and pages and pages. So I'll be
cutting everybody else off for the rest of the time. So
there you go.
I'm good.
There you go. Everyone here, they don't care about the whole back and forth between Bove and Hoffinger and whatever decisions were issued against Trump. and how things are going to proceed here. We're going to move on. I'm moving on down. I'm moving on down to the witness. The witness. Let's make this small. Just
14.
it's what? What page am I going to? Is that
4022, I think.
22? All right. There we go. All right. Okay, so we got the jury in here and witness entering. And we'll start with you again, Your Honor. Good with you, Janowski.
Honor.
Well, no, good morning. Good morning. Start with good morning. I highlighted
Good
it.
morning.
I highlighted some. You're not looking at it with me. It's 4022.
Oh, 4022? Okay.
Yep.
Give me a second here. While he's doing that, let me pull this up here. Jackal says, Joe says this isn't calling his our leader, but he keeps righteously immolating leftists whenever he debates them. Well, that's very kind assessment. Thank you. Paddock, God bless you for adding 5 new members of the following. Who did he bring on board? Let me just see that real quick. Who did he bring on, Paddock? Paddock. Oh, enjoy the show. And Michael W. And Jack. And Lizzie Bartley. And Salty. Brought into the following. Salty, please make sure everyone understands the rules of the following. I don't want to hear about squirrel sacrifices or whatever this craziness was, because that totally did not happen. This did not happen at all. Okay. There's no squirrel mutilations, no goat sacrifices. There's no burning of incense, okay? This is another thing. Apparently, some people think that there's some sort of burning of incense. The following is not a cult type of cult. It's just a gathering of like-minded folks. Are you ready, Janowski? Yes.
All right.
Good morning,
Start us
Mr.
up with a good
Cohen.
morning.
Welcome back. I remind you are still under oath.
Good morning, Yana.
Let's get the jury, please.
All rise. And do the party stipulate that all juries are present and properly seated? Yes. All right. Go for a court. Janowski?
Line 18.
Oh. Okay. Thank you. Good morning, jurors. Welcome back. Counsel, you may inquire.
May I? Good morning, Mr. Cohen.
Good morning.
So we ended last Thursday. Since that time until right now, how many reporters have talked to you about what happened last week?
I didn't speak to reporters about what happened last week.
You didn't speak to a single reporter about what happened last week.
I've spoken to reporters who just called to say hello, to see how I'm doing, to check in, but I didn't talk about this case.
So the reporters you spoke with just greeted you and asked you how you're doing, didn't speak at all about your testimony last week?
Correct.
Now, prior to your testimony, let's focus on 2024. So just since the beginning of this year, you talked to reporters pretty extensively about this case, correct?
I have, yeah.
Again, just focus on this year. How many times did you meet with the prosecutors of this case, again, just this year in 2024?
More than a dozen.
More than a dozen. Like more than 12, but 20 times?
It's possible, yeah.
Well, and I'm not looking for an exact number, but is it closer to 20 or closer to 12?
Probably closer to 20.
Were those meetings all more than an hour?
Yes, sir.
Were some of them more than 2 hours?
Yes, sir.
When is the most recent time you met with them?
Approximately 10 days ago.
So you testified on Monday. You started to testify on Monday of last week. Was it over the prior weekend?
Yes, sir.
When you met with the prosecutors, again, just focused on this year, 2024, they asked you questions similar to what they asked you last Monday or Tuesday, right?
Right. I lost. Yeah, they asked me questions. Yes, sir.
Right. But that wasn't my question to you. They asked you questions similar to the questions they asked you on the stand on Monday and Tuesday of last week, correct?
The same topics. Yes, sir.
Well, the topic you testified to hasn't changed in your prep talk with him for a long time, right?
Correct.
So my question is different than the one that you're answering. When they asked you questions last Monday and Tuesday, okay, when Mrs. Hoffinger asked you questions, you had heard these questions from her before during prep, correct?
Some of them, not all of them.
What's a question you were asked last week that you were hearing for the first time?
I can't tell you. There are many questions that I've not heard before.
So you heard many questions last Monday or Tuesday that you were hearing for the very first time.
Yes, sir.
How about documents? The documents that you were shown by the people last Monday and Tuesday, and the emails and text messages, and the records and the invoices, you had reviewed those in prep with the people, right?
That's correct.
And there were some emails and documents, I assume, that you were shown in prep that you were not shown last week, meaning that you went over them in prep, but they ultimately weren't shown to you by the people last week, right?
Correct.
The prep you're talking about for this trial, maybe not to the same extent, but anytime you would testify under oath, you would prep for it, right?
Correct.
Maybe not more than 20 times. Anytime you prep to be under oath, you meet with your lawyer and other people, and you prep, right?
Yeah, that's right.
That includes when you testify before Congress.
Yes, sir.
Do you know someone named Dan Goldman?
I know Dan Goldman. Yes, sir.
Who is Dan Goldman?
Dan Goldman is a member now of Congress.
He's met with you in prep for certain testimony as well.
Congressional testimony, yes.
Which congressional testimony was that?
House Oversight Committee.
So this was the one in February of 2019, is that right?
Yes, sir.
How many times did you meet with him?
I believe twice.
You know he's a former federal prosecutor, right?
Yes, sir.
During the testimony you gave in February of 2019, that's one of the times you lied, right?
Yes, sir.
Now I'm going to start briefly with the time in October of 2016, okay? So we're going back to the few weeks leading up to when you put money in and then paid the NDA with Ms. Daniels, okay? So early October until October 26th, okay? You said last week, correct me if I'm wrong, that there was significant urgency to the Daniels situation at that time, right?
Correct.
And that issue, the Mrs. Daniels issue, was taking a lot of your time, right?
Yes, sir.
And when you spoke with President Trump during that time, you testified last week that many of the times you spoke with him, it was about that issue, right?
Yes, sir.
Whether it was on the phone or in person, right?
Correct.
But you'll agree with me, right, that you had a lot going on both in your personal life and with President Trump in those first few weeks of October, right?
Yes, sir.
Do you recall dealing with a meaningful issue with respect to your taxi medallion business and whether you should invest or restructure loans? Do you remember doing that at the time?
Yes, sir.
You were doing that with Mr. Friedman? He was possibly part of that deal?
No, sir. That's incorrect.
We'll come back to that. You were also dealing with a loan, I think it was a loan, correct me if I'm wrong, on one of your investment properties that you have with your brother. Is that right?
I had an investment property with my brother, but there was no loan. I believe it was a sale.
Well, do you recall in the October timeframe working with a lawyer to close a deal that generated $7 million that ultimately closed at the end of October of 2016?
Yes, sir. As I said, it was a sale.
And that was with your brother.
Yes, sir.
Now, you were also you testified last week about your work for the National Diversity Coalition for President Trump. There was a fair amount of work going on in October with respect to that as well, right?
Yes, sir.
Do you recall right around October 26th and the week before getting an endorsement from a family member of Dr. King?
Oh, yes, sir.
And that was very important for sure, right?
It was very important.
Do you also recall working pretty closely in that time period, early October to October 26th, with Mr. Pecker, but not on anything to do with what you testified about, with a separate litigation involving iPayment?
I do, yes.
In that case, a lawyer named Mark Kasowitz was involved, right?
Correct.
And another lawyer that you knew was involved as well, right?
I don't...
You don't recall?
No, sir.
We'll come back to it. What about, do you remember at that same time period leading right up to the 26th, helping one of President Trump's daughters, Tiffany Trump, with a potential extortion of photographs? Do you remember that?
I do.
That was leading up right up to the 25th and the 26th of October, right?
Yes, sir.
In connection with that issue, do you remember having a conversation with Mr. Pecker about that?
Yes, sir.
And a conversation with the general counsel of AMI about that?
Yes, sir.
And then we talked about the issue with the harassing phone calls last week, right? That also happened in that time period leading up to the 26th, right?
Yes, sir.
So I started talking about the taxi medallion issue. Do you know someone named John Lydon, Lydon?
Yes, sir.
Who is that?
He's a mortgage broker, bond broker out of Florida.
Was that the person you were working on a potential deal with in the first few weeks of October 2016?
Yes, sir.
What's the name of his company?
Resolution Consultants.
So his Florida entity that he runs his business out of is called the same thing that you called your LLC when you opened it up in early October.
Yes, sir.
That was right when you were talking to him about potentially about a deal with respect to some loans around some of the medallions that you had investment in, or they were your medallions.
No, sir. I spoke to Mr. Lydon about, I had a mortgage on a property, and I was looking to sell that property to him.
Using Mr. Lydon.
Yes, sir. It didn't have to do with medallions. It had to do with a piece of real estate.
Go ahead.
In Florida, that I had first position lien on.
You're sure that the deal didn't have something to do with the New York City medallion portfolio, an overview of the portfolio as of August 31, 2016?
No. I believe Mr. Lydon had to do with a mortgage that I had on a piece of real estate in Florida.
So if I can show you what's been marked for identification just for you and for the parties in the court, B130. Whereupon an exhibit is shown on the screens of the witness and the parties.
You can skip that.
Okay.
Just read on.
Okay. If we can focus on September 28th of 2016. Do you see that text message from someone named Carrie?
I do.
That's Mr. Lydon's wife.
I believe so, yes.
Do you have any doubt?
I do not.
So you see that communication from her saying the New York City medallion portfolio overview as of 8/31, and then there's an attachment, a spreadsheet.
Yes, sir.
We can take that down. Do you recall receiving a text a few days later from John, from Carrie's husband, saying that he wanted to talk to you about that over the weekend?
Yes, sir.
And then we don't have to go through every communication. You had multiple communications around that issue into October, correct?
Correct.
And you talked to him on the phone about it as well.
Yes, sir.
If we can just put up for you and the parties in the court B132, which is an October 13th email. Take a look at that and see if you remember that and that it was the medallion acquisition proposal that you were discussing.
Yes, sir.
And then, do you recall your conversations with Mr. Lydon again during that period in early October 2016? He was asking you to find somebody to help invest with you, to find a client who has the funds to invest with you. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
And the client was Mr. Friedman, right?
No, sir.
So let's take a look if we can. Well, let's step back for a minute. You were communicating with Mr. Friedman regularly during that time as well, right?
He was the medallion operator for medallions. Yes, sir.
So it's fair to say that you were obviously communicating with him a lot. Is that fair?
Yes.
If you can now take a look at what's been marked for identification as B133. This is part of the deal that you were working on with Mr. Lydon involving Resolution Consultants. I highlighted some of these at the top. Those are all medallion loans that were part of your relationship with Mr. Friedman, right?
No, sir.
No?
No, sir.
What were they part of?
I don't know. I was never partners with Mr. Freeman.
What do you mean by that?
Mr. Freeman was a licensed New York City medallion agent, and he was running my medallions, both in New York as well as some in Chicago.
So the spreadsheet that Mr. Lydon sent to you that went to October, that doesn't refresh your recollection of whether Mr. Friedman was part of that deal?
No, sir.
You can take that down. We can show you B144, which is an October 14th email. Take a look at that. Take your time reading it and see if that refreshes your recollection about whether Mr. Friedman was part of that deal.
Objection, Judge. Just as to characterizing the testimony.
Let's see if this refreshes his recollection.
Sir?
You can take that down. Does that reflect your recollection about who is the funder that you were interested in getting for that deal?
No, sir.
Well, do you recall right after receiving that email, you called Mr. Friedman regularly on that day?
I spoke to Mr. Friedman.
Now, during that time period, do you recall any issues with Mr. Friedman because of his financial situation?
Because of the entire taxi industry financial situation.
Well, I'm not talking about the entire industry. I'm asking whether you were having issues with Mr. Friedman paying you during that time period.
Yes, sir.
Checks were bouncing?
Yes, sir.
You were having a hard time getting checks from him.
Yes, sir.
And there was a ton of communication about that at the time, right?
Yes, sir.
Do you recall whether he was also going through something personal during that time?
Yes, sir.
What was he going through?
Marital problems.
Did you in that time period help him with respect to his marital problems?
I tried.
What did you try to do?
I tried to assist him bringing them back together, as well as talking to him about potential lawyers.
Did you help him find a place to live?
Yes, sir.
Was that?
Judge, I'm going to have to object at this point.
Please approach.
Ms. Hoffinger?
I understand we're going into some areas that he was busy in October, but to go into some other person's personal marital issues and whether he assisted him, I don't see how that's relevant.
Where are you going with this, Mr. Branch?
Mr. Cohen in October was dealing with a tremendous number of issues, including Mr. Friedman, who the court will recall very quickly after that gets into a lot of legal trouble coming out of his financial problems. During this time, there's a series of communications we're about to talk to him about, where he's working to get an apartment for him in one of Ivanka Trump's apartments. That's all. 2 questions.
You have to bring up Mr. Friedman's financial troubles? How does that factor into Mr. Friedman's financial troubles?
Because he eventually cooperates and testifies against him in the Southern District of New York.
So what? Are you suggesting Mr. Cohen can't do more than one thing at a time as a lawyer for a company?
Keep it to 3 or more questions about him being busy.
All right. So, you helped him find an attorney, is that correct?
I did.
And is that all during that same time period, meaning the first few weeks of October, meaning around and up until October 26th, and maybe a little bit after, right?
Yes, sir.
Did you have the resolution consultants deal that you were working on? Did that deal ever close?
No, sir.
So when you opened Resolution Consultants in early October, your testimony is that you opened this because you needed to find an LLC for the Karen McDougal payment. And for all of the materials that AMI had on President Trump, the company wasn't because you were considering doing this deal with the Resolution Consultants in Florida?
No, sir.
Now, I want to talk to you for a few minutes about the iPayments litigation.
By the
What
way, I
do you
just want to
recall-
point out. I just want to
Oh, yeah.
pause and point out to
Yeah.
the audience here. This answer, no, sir. I have no idea, and I don't know if anyone knows whether that no, sir, actually means yes, sir. I'm agreeing with you because this happens to attorneys in litigation all the time. The question, as worded by Todd Blanche, is rather poor because when he says it wasn't because you were considering doing this deal. So a lot of times people say, that's true. No, it wasn't because I wasn't because, or sometimes they'll say, yes, I'm agreeing with you to your no. So when he says no, sir, here, I literally I'm sitting here, I'm baffled as to whether he's agreeing with Blanche or disagreeing with Blanche. Now, sometimes you could tell from
Good
the
point.
tone, perhaps, but I have no idea whether that's a no or a yes. So it's
Yeah.
one of the things, if you're a practicing litigator, it's one of the things you need to really, it's so hard because we naturally talk that way, the way Todd Blanche is doing. And he's pretty good about not falling into it too often. But when it comes across, I just want to call it to the audience's attention. Chugi says, I want to just get two things here. First, I'm long overdue, and Breck Nichols here on a Rumble Rant saying to you, hello, Ed Morrissey. I see you looking
Breck!
good, keeping it shiny. You know Breck
Breck!
Nichols?
I do, Breck, from way back. Yeah, hey, Breck.
Yeah.
Glad to see you're there.
Yeah. And Chugi says, overheard at the Kool-Aid station, digger number one. Can you believe this Gino still thinks we are in a cult? Sips cans and why am I wearing a tracksuit? And where digger two? And where are we? This never happened. This is all hearsay. None of this has happened. Anyway, let's move forward now into the next question here, right?
Now I want to talk for a few minutes about the iPayments litigation. What do you recall about that litigation?
I don't recall the specifics of it.
Do you remember an individual named Michael Sirota?
Sirota?
Sirota. Who is Mr. Sirota?
Mr. Sirota is a partner over at a law firm called Cole Schatz.
Do you recall him being Mr. Pecker's attorney in connection with this litigation?
Yes, sir.
And that litigation was filed the very last day of September 2016, correct?
Yes, sir.
And do you remember what that litigation was about?
I do not.
Do you remember whether another colleague of yours named Mark Kasowitz represented the other side of that litigation?
Yes, sir.
And that when, at least for part of that time, you were in London visiting your daughter and celebrating your anniversary, correct?
Correct.
And you recall having communications with Mr. Sirota at that point when you were in London about this litigation?
Yes, sir.
Ultimately, you tried to play a role in settling that litigation, right?
Yes, sir.
And one of the reasons you did that is because of your friendship with Mr. Pecker.
Yes, sir.
Is one of the reasons you did that because of your relationship with Mr. Sirota and your relationship with Mr. Kasowitz?
They're all friends. Yes, sir.
They're all friends of yours.
Yes, sir.
And you communicated to them about that in October, right?
Yes, sir.
But you also were at least exploring the idea of getting a job at iPayments, correct?
It was floated. Yes, sir.
And that was, when you say it was floated, during that time period, it was floated, right?
Yes, sir.
So all of this was within the first few weeks of that time around October 26th.
Yes, sir.
Now, and we talked about this for a few minutes at the beginning of your testimony today, but you worked with an individual named Pastor Daryl Scott on the National Diversity Coalition, right?
That's correct.
And at the time, I believe you testified last Tuesday, this was pretty big deal, pretty big deal for you and for the campaign, right?
Yes, sir.
In the week of October 26th, in fact, on October 25th, you were sent a video link about Dr. King's niece's support for President Trump, right? Do you remember that?
I do.
And the niece is a doctor herself, right?
Yes, sir.
So this was a big deal for you, right?
It was a big deal for everyone.
So, including you.
Yes, sir.
And so on October 26th, so that's the day you caused that the payment was made to Ms. Daniels' attorney, right?
Correct.
You talked on multiple times that day with folks associated with Dr. King's statement and the fact that she was now going to be supporting President Trump, right?
That's correct.
She actually participated in an event later on that week. Do you recall that?
I do.
Do you recall you and Pastor Scott trying to immediately put her on the board or whatever leadership position y'all had at the time? Is that right?
That's correct.
And all that was happening the week of the 24th, 25th, and 26th, right?
Yes, sir.
And then I mentioned this earlier with President Trump's daughter. Do you recall that on October 25th, so the day before, do you recall her communicating with you that she had concerns about somebody trying to blackmail her?
Yes, sir.
And do you recall that you handled it immediately?
Yes, sir.
You spoke with Mr. Pecker?
Yes.
You spoke with obviously with Ms. Trump about it, with Tiffany Trump about it, correct?
Yes.
And you then later spoke with the general counsel at AMI, correct?
Correct.
And that was all to figure out a way to shut this down, right?
Correct.
And that all happened in the afternoon and evening of October 25th, correct?
Correct.
Are you sure about that? I can show you the documents.
No, I believe it's correct.
So do you remember, now I'm talking about the 26th, the day this all happened, you testified on direct that you had 2 phone calls with President Trump that morning at 8:26 and 8:34. The 8:26 call was 3 minutes and 1 second. The 8:34 call was 1 minute and 28 seconds. Do you remember talking about that?
I do.
Correct?
Yes.
Now, you testified on direct that the reason why you wanted to speak with President Trump on that day was to make sure that he approved of what you were doing. You needed his approval for this, and that was the sum and substance of the conversation. You wanted the deal. You wanted Ms. Daniels to not be able to sell her story to the Daily Mail, and you were about to go across the street and do it, so you wanted his blessing, right?
That's correct.
And that's still your testimony today.
Yes, sir.
Now, do you remember what was happening in the campaign, what President Trump was doing on October 26th?
Sir, I don't understand your question.
Well, do you have a recollection of what President Trump was doing on the 26th in connection with his campaign, rallies, interviews, or anything else?
He was doing rallies basically every day.
All right, but do you have a specific recollection of what he was doing on that day?
No, sir.
So let me show you what has been marked for identification just for you, the court, and the parties, B-168. And I don't know that you've ever seen this before, so I'm not showing it to you like you have. I'm just showing it to you to see if it refreshes your recollection.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Well, do you remember that morning? Okay, so the morning of the 26th, that President Trump was going to sit down and do an interview with ABC News right after 9 a.m. Does that ring a bell?
No, sir.
Does it ring a bell, though, if I reminded you that it wasn't just President Trump, it was going to be his entire family that was sitting down with Mr. Stephanopoulos, so not just President Trump, but also his children and Melania Trump as well?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
That doesn't ring a bell, Mr. Cohen?
Objection.
Sustained. The objection is sustained.
Do you recall, are you familiar with the post office building in Washington, D.C.?
I am.
Do you recall, for a time period, President Trump owned that, right?
Yes, sir.
Do you recall October 26th being the day that there was an opening ceremony for that? Do you remember
No,
that?
No, sir.
So, but you do have a specific recollection, it sounds like, that on those 2 phone calls, you just talked about the Stormy Daniels deal. That's it.
Because they were important to me.
So, was fixing Tiffany Trump's situation important to you?
It was important that I take care of it, but it was not personally important to me.
But that wouldn't have been something you updated her father about when you spoke with him the next morning?
No, sir.
No? You wouldn't have updated him about any... Well, let me ask you this. At the time, that was right around the time that there was still fallout from the Access Hollywood tape, correct?
Correct.
So if there was going to be meetings and interviews that day, you don't think you would have spoken with President Trump about anything involving that issue, just about Stormy Daniels?
My recollection is that I was speaking to him about Stormy Daniels because that was what he tasked me to take care of, and that's what I've been working on.
Do you recall ever speaking with President Trump about the fact that he was opening a hotel in his old post office building in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, we had conversations about that.
Even before it was opened, right?
Yes, sir.
But you wouldn't have talked to him about that on that day.
No, sir.
Just about the Daniels situation.
As I recall, yes.
Now, I want to talk for a few minutes now about the retainer agreement. The meeting that you had with Mr. Weisselberg in January 2017, and you talked about, you met with him, you brought the statement that showed that you had transferred $131,000, and then there is writing from you, and then there's writing from Mr. Weisselberg, correct? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, sir.
And I believe your testimony is that the way that the $35,000 a month, the way that that number was kind of developed was $130,000 for the payment to Ms. Daniels, right?
Correct.
$50,000 from the Red Finch polling situation.
Yes, sir.
That's 180, right?
Correct.
And then your testimony is that Mr. Weisselberg said, let's gross that up and double it, which brings you to 360.
One second, I need to answer with a straight face. That's correct. Yeah,
And
they
then
just
Mr.
voluntarily said, let's just double how much money we're going to give you. Let's just do that.
Yeah.
That's correct. That's exactly what he said. I didn't have a gun to him or anything, and he voluntarily just said, I didn't even suggest it. He just threw at me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't we just
Happened
double
in every
that?
business deal.
You paid 180. We're going to give you back 360 because that's how our business operates. That's correct.
And then Mr. Weisselberg said that you were getting another $60,000 bonus.
Why not? Yes, sir. So it's 360 because we're doubling the 180 and then tacking on another 60. Yes, sir.
And that adds up to $420 or $35,000 a month, right?
Yeah, that's why I didn't get it because I always got 420. That's why I got the 420 that year. Just not because I got 420 year after year after year before that. The 420 I got this year was to repay me for the Stormy Daniel loan, double it just to be nice, and just throw in an extra 60 there for craps and giggles. Oh my God.
Yeah. But you were shorted about $100,000 on your bonus that year, right?
Correct. I remember that vividly.
So for many years, you'd gotten $150,000. In 2016, you got 50, correct? Right?
That's correct.
So the $50,000 that you got back from Redfinch, well, you only paid the Redfinch owner $20,000, right?
Yes, sir.
So you were getting some. He was a friend of yours, or you knew him. Is that right?
I knew him.
And he was giving you a hard
By the
time.
way,
because
just in case any of you are confused, I, Michael Cohen, am claiming to the Trump organization that I paid 50, but I really only paid 20. I'm just billing them as if I paid 50, and then they're paying me double on top of that of the total of the gross total, because that's part. They basically, because they went from 130 to 180, out of which I paid, and then they're doubling it, and then throwing in $60,000. This is just insanity. This is craziness.
Because Trump is always that generous.
He is. He didn't give me a bonus that year at all. You know, he slashed my bonus, but he still was just crazy generous that on that particular time. Yeah. Okay.
All right. And he was giving you a hard time because he hadn't been paid and the Trump organization wasn't going to pay him, right?
Correct.
So you went to a bank and cashed 2 checks for him. Is that right?
No, sir.
Well, how did you pay him the $20,000?
I went across the street from my home to TD Bank, and I just took out cash over a couple of days.
So you went and withdrew cash. Why did you do it over a couple of days?
I just didn't want to take it out, the 20,000. This is like, and I also saw that when Fannie Willis testified something like this, people started looking through her bank records. So that's why I don't want to claim I took out 20 in one chance, because people might look through my bank records. And I realize how stupid it sounds when you say I got piles of cash from like taking out $20 at a shot, that I just have piles of cash. So now I'm just going to tell you that I took it out over a couple of days, just because.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
But
What
she
were the
didn't have a brown
increments that
paper bag.
Yeah, that's true.
What were the increments that you took it out in?
Well, ShopRite only lets me take out $25. No, I don't recall, sir.
But at some point after a couple of days, you have $20,000 in cash and you meet up with them. Where?
He came to the office.
And you had what, like a duffel bag full of cash? Like, where was the cash?
No, sir. It was in a small bag.
What kind of bag?
A small brown paper bag.
A brown paper bag.
Totally. Yes.
So you had $20,000 in a brown paper bag. You met with them and you gave him $20,000 to take care of that $50,000 bill?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did that. I don't recall if it was exactly 20, but he came to the office and I gave him the cash.
And when was that in relation to the meeting that you had with Mr. Weisselberg in January of 2017?
Substantially before.
Substantially, like a year?
Yes, sir.
More than a year.
It could have been a couple of months more.
Okay. So at some point in late 2015 or early 2016, that happened?
I believe so.
So you paid him back his $20,000 and you were square with him, right?
He would have liked the additional 30 as well.
Well, fair enough. But you said before in meetings with prosecutors that ended the dispute. That ended the issue with him, right?
Between us, yes.
Well, who else would it have been between?
Mr. Trump and Red Finch.
So are you aware of Mr. Trump and Red Finch having ongoing litigation or issues after you gave him the $20,000?
No, sir.
Because you were the connect, right?
I was, yes.
And it was your friend that owned the company.
Again, someone who I knew, yes.
It's all right. I'm sorry. I'm calling him a friend. Someone you know owned the company. And so you knew when you gave him the $20,000, that was the end of it, right?
No, sir. He still wanted the full amount, but this was enough to placate him for the time being. I still needed his service and I still needed his availability, so I accepted the request, which was to give him at least certain monies that he was out of pocket on.
And then Mr. Weisselberg says, okay, what do we owe you? You say $50,000 for Red Finch. And Mr. Weisselberg says, oh, let's gross that up. And it makes that $100,000, right?
Well, that's about the gist of it. Yeah.
So at what point did you give? Well, let me ask it a different way. You never gave the $30,000 that was owed to the guy that owned Red Finch, did you?
No, sir.
So you stole from the Trump organization, right?
Oh, yeah. Yes, sir.
And you didn't just steal the $30,000, right? It was actually, because it was grossed up, it was $60,000.
Yes, sir.
Meaning, if you'd been honest with Mr. Weisselberg and said, I'm only owed $20,000, and he grossed that up, it would have been 40, not 100, correct?
Yeah, but then I would have basically said that the bonus he gave me wasn't 60, it was 80. So that would have just balanced it out anyway. But yeah, correct. Okay, correct.
And you told multiple prosecutors in the district attorney's office that story, right?
And they bought it, yes, sir.
Did you ever have to plead guilty to larceny?
Oh, no, sir.
Have you paid back the Trump organization the money that you stole from them?
No, sir.
And by the way, you were in communication with Mr. Weisselberg coming up with a plan to cover up the $130,000 payment, right? That's your testimony?
Yes, sir.
And in the middle of that conversation, you lied to him about how much money you were owed from the Red Finch transaction?
The transaction with Red Finch had gone on, as I stated, for a long time prior. He knew of the $50,000 that was owed to Red Finch. And when we were sitting down and making the calculations, that's when he asked me, is $50,000 for Red Finch? And I said, yes.
You didn't just say yes. You actually wrote 50,000 on that sheet of paper, right?
Oh, yeah. I didn't want to make sure we knew it was 50. Yes.
So my question before you gave us that answer it was a very simple question. In the middle of this conversation that you're having with Mr.
By the way,
Weisselberg,
Lawrence O'Donnell calls this not theft. This is balance adjustment because he didn't get his full bonus. So this is balance
redistribution of wealth.
It's a balance adjustment.
In the middle of this conversation you're having with Mr. Weisselberg, and you're figuring out how to cover up this $130,000 payment, right? You lied to him about how much you owed. You need reimbursement for Red Finch.
Correct.
And to this day, you've never fixed that, right?
No, sir.
And you've talked about that incident on multiple occasions with the district attorney.
Oh, I have. They don't care.
And moreover, when you had testified last week on Tuesday about what you just said, you didn't say you stole from the Trump organization, did you?
Objection.
You're muted. Just, I'm going to jump you.
Sustained.
Of course it's sustained because this is like really calling him a thief. And it's like, we got to.
He sustains all my objections.
There you go. Oh, not next one.
Well, not the next one. But did you steal? But you did steal from the Trump organization, correct?
Objection.
Overruled.
I'm sorry?
That's one.
You did steal from the Trump organization based on the expected reimbursement from Red Finch, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, I want to understand the meeting a little better. Your testimony is that you have a conversation with Mr. Weisselberg that you're going to come up with. You're going to gross this up, add 60,000 to get you to 420, right?
Yes, sir.
And then at the time you think, I'm going to get paid at one time, but you shortly thereafter learn it's going to be 12 payments of $35,000, right?
Correct.
And you were told by...
Isn't that weird also he gets equal monthly payments, like someone getting a salary, the way he had for the previous 9 years? It's so coincidental. It's crazy coincidental. All right, go on.
Just coincidence. And you were told by Mr. Weisselberg just to call it a retainer.
Yeah, that's correct.
And you are told just send in an invoice and we will get you paid, right?
Correct. Oh yeah, I also
We
had
will
to pay like taxes on this also. Presumably I had to pay taxes on this, which I wouldn't if I was repaying a loan. I don't know what the heck is happening here. All right.
Right.
Because you're calling it a
We
retainer.
will,
Oh, that's why he said gross him up, because he's going to pay taxes on it. That's why.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We will send it monthly.
Yes, sir.
But your testimony, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is that there was never an expectation that there would be a retainer agreement, right?
Correct.
And by the way, you had never had a retainer agreement when you worked for Trump Org, right?
That's correct.
We went over this last week, but you never had one with the personal work you were doing for President Trump, right?
Correct.
You never had one for any of the work that you were doing for any of his children, right?
Correct.
And the clear deal between you and Mr. Weisselberg was that you weren't going to have one going forward, right?
This was for reimbursement. Correct.
Right, correct. Because if you weren't going to be paid for being his lawyer, this was just some big cover up, some big reimbursement for the $130,000, right?
Correct.
I want to show you. Well, let me ask you this. Except for that one conversation with Mr. Weisselberg about that, and then you guys go in and talk to President Trump about it, supposedly, right? Do you remember that? Except for those two conversations, did you have any other about your role as President Trump's personal attorney?
No, sir.
So the conversations you had with Mr. Weisselberg about the retainer agreement and that there would be no retainer agreement were all in that meeting. That meeting, I'm sorry, that was a terrible question. So the conversations that you had with Mr. Weisselberg about the retainer agreement and the fact that there would not be one all took place in the meeting you had with him alone and the meeting that you had with President Trump. Is that your testimony?
Yes, sir.
And now, if you would have had a retainer agreement, that agreement would have been between you and your client, right?
Correct.
And who would your client have been?
It would have been Mr. Trump.
So there was never going to be a scenario where you were going to have a retainer agreement with the Trump org, correct?
Correct.
Or with Mr. Weisselberg,
Correct.
or even with the trust, right?
Well, it couldn't have been with the trust.
Well, don't you recall during that time that there was a separation between President Trump and the Trump org because he was going to be president?
Yes, sir.
And the way that was dealt with was the Trump org and all the assets got put into a trust.
Yes, sir.
And that was to separate President Trump being president and his company. That was going to be run by his sons, correct?
And Mr. Weisselberg, yes.
So his company, the president was president, and his sons and Mr. Weisselberg were going to run the company, correct?
Correct.
So your personal relationship, your private attorney to President Trump relationship, wasn't going to be with you and the trust. It was to be with you and President Trump, right?
Yes, but the trust controlled his cash flow. So I would suspect that somewhere along the line, maybe that's where the funds would come from. I didn't know the answer.
I'm sorry, I didn't ask you where the funds would come from. I'm saying your attorney-client relationship, your retainer agreement, that would have just been between you and President Trump.
Yes, sir.
That was my only question.
Understood.
The payment could have come from, as it often does, from other sources.
Correct.
But the attorney-client relationship and the retainer agreement is between you and President Trump, right?
Yes, sir.
But that's not what happened here, right? Because you and Mr. Weisselberg decided that there would be no retainer agreement, right?
Can you rephrase the question?
I will withdraw that question. I'm going to show you what has been marked as Defense Exhibit D-260 just for you, the parties, and the court. And take a look and see if you can see your email, Mr. Weisselberg's email, and then the date of that, January 31st, 2017. Do you see that?
I do.
And that's your email. You can only see a part of it, but that looks like your email, correct?
Correct.
I mean, if you take a look at the lower chain with somebody named Nelson Ornelas, and you were forwarding that rings true. This is an email that you forwarded, Mr. Weisselberg?
Yes, sir.
We offered B-260, Your Honor.
No objection.
Accept into evidence.
If we can put that up on the screen for everybody. And then if we can blow that up first when it was sent. So just the first page, the header. No, not that. The email, the top email, please. So that's an email from Mr. Weisselberg to you on January 31st, 2017 at 6:07 p.m., correct?
That's correct.
So by this time, you had had your meeting with him about how this cover-up payment would work, right?
Correct.
You had already started your role as President Trump's personal attorney.
Yes, sir.
And this is basically your last day at Trump.org, or maybe right around this time was your last day at Trump.org, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you are forwarding an email. I'm sorry. Alan is responding to an email that you sent him, Mr. Weisselberg, at 6:07 at night, right?
Yes, correct. He's sending me an email, yes.
Responding to an email that you sent him lower down, right?
Correct.
Okay. Can we look at the first two lines of the actual text of that email? Can you go ahead and read that out to the jury, please?
Thank you. You never stopped in for a bro hug. Anyway, please prepare the agreement we discussed so we can pay you monthly.
You can take that down. Why would you have had to prepare an agreement so that you could get paid monthly if, as you said last week, you, and again a few minutes ago, there was never an expectation that you were going to have an agreement?
It was in order to get the reimbursement of the $35,000 per month back.
Oh, I understand that. But you just testified 4 minutes ago, and you testified last Tuesday, that you and Mr. Weisselberg had a deal that there would never be an agreement because it was all a cover-up, right? That was your testimony last week, and that was your testimony a few minutes ago, yes?
Yes, sir.
All right. So can we put up People's Exhibit 1, please? It can go to everybody. It's an evidence. Can we go to the second page? And then if you can go to the third page. So this is the first. So if we can go back to the first page, actually. Thank you. Now, you remember this arrangement that you had the first couple of months that the trust wrote the checks, right?
Correct.
If we could blow up the middle of that payment, the email from Alan Weisselberg to Jeff McConney, do you have any understanding? Well, you can take that down, actually. Do you have any understanding as to why Don Jr. and Eric would have approved your payment as opposed to President Trump?
Because they were the trustees of the trust.
So that was what you were talking about a few minutes ago, right? Where there could be a payment plan where the money comes from the trust as opposed to President Trump's personal account, right?
Hold on a second. I'm very confused. I'm very, very confused. I'm not confused about it. I mean, he's focusing on the payment here.
Well,
I forgot about that's what he's testimony. No, I understand that. No, this is one of the things I'm a little confused about. We'll come back. Don't worry. I forgot about this Chinese wall that Donald Trump set up. So Donald Trump, all these entries came in 2017 when Trump was in office. So he's not even anywhere near the office when these entries are being made. I just want to point this out to you. All these entries, not only is he not in the office, he's got this wall of separation between him and the Trump organization because in order to make sure that he's not violating the emoluments clause of and benefiting from them. So therefore, he basically sets up this wall, says, this is everything going in trust over there, and you guys are going to handle this company, and I'm not having anything to do with this 2017, 18, 19, 20. So how the hell is he being charged? You want to charge Don Jr.? Okay. You want to charge Eric or Weisselberg for this? Okay, they're running the company. On what basis on earth is he the one who's responsible when everyone knows he's got this wall up there? I mean, just think about that for a second. I never even realized this before. All those entries were after he had set up this wall in order to make sure that there was no sort of ethical issue between him and the Trump organization. And now the Trump organization is making these entries when he's got this wall that's blocking him from even knowing what's happening there. This is insane. This is insane. I never even thought about this before.
Don't let Letitia know about that.
This is critical. Letitia, I think that all the stuff that she charged him with, that predated his presidency. This activity, as far as entering these charges, was after the wall set up, and he has no control over the books and records that are being kept by the Trump organization. Correct. That's unbelievable that he's being hit with criminal charges for this. This is really outrageous.
Yeah, it's a great point. That one slid by me too.
I only noticed that for the first time now. I mean, we're covering this trial for months, and this is the first time I was like, what the hell? What the hell's happening here? Anyway, let's go forward here. So let's start this question here, I guess.
Yep. I'll reread the question. So that was what you were talking about a few minutes ago, right? Where there could be a payment plan where money comes from the trust as opposed to President Trump's personal account, right?
I'm sorry, your question is confusing.
A few minutes ago, when you talked about how your retainer would be with President Trump, but a third source may provide payment, correct?
Correct.
And for the first 3 months, that's exactly what happened here, right? The trust paid you. It didn't come out of President Trump's personal funds, right?
Correct.
And then the remaining 9 months, the checks were signed from President Trump's personal account, right?
Correct.
But the first 2 checks for the first 3 months were signed by representatives from the trust, right?
Correct.
And as that email just indicated, not surprising to you, it would have been approved by Eric and Don, right?
Either Eric or Don in association with Alan Weisselberg.
So, is it fair to say that once you became President Trump's personal attorney in 2017, every single email you sent, your signature block said the same thing? Fair?
Yes, sir.
Every time you sent an email, whether it was to a potential client, right?
Correct.
Whether it was to a friend,
Yes, sir.
whether it was to the Trump org sending an invoice, it always said personal attorney to President Donald J. Trump, right?
Yes, sir.
And by the way, that's the same job you had for a decade, right?
Yes, except not to the president, CEO of the Trump organization as special counsel, but now it was personal attorney to the president of the United States.
But what I mean is his job changed, meaning President Trump's job changed, but yours didn't. Your job didn't, right?
Correct.
So, and again, at that time in
They all
2017,
moved on without me. I had the same job. They all moved up and I didn't. I need revenge.
Write a book.
So, and again, at that time in 2017, as you're rolling out to be a personal attorney for President Donald J. Trump, you told everybody that this was happening, correct?
Oh, not everybody, but I certainly was proud of the role and I announced it.
You told TMZ.
Yes, sir.
You told the New York Times.
Yes, sir.
You actually gave them a little scoop on it. Is that fair?
Yes, sir.
And as to that fact, you went on TV and you told Sean Hannity about it. You announced it, right?
I did.
And what you said repeatedly at the time was that you were going to remain in the same role you always had, right? Which is you were going to be the personal attorney to the President of the United States, right?
Correct.
And that's what you did, right?
Yes, sir.
So I want to show you and the parties in the court B261. And I'm going to ask you if you see that email, and if so, do you recognize it? Do you recognize that email?
I do, sir.
Is that your goodbye email to the Trump organization?
It was.
We offer B261.
No objection.
Accepted into evidence.
We are going to display that for everybody. We are not going to read the email, but this is the email that you sent on January 27th, 2017, right?
Yes, sir.
It went to everybody at the Trump organization, correct?
Correct.
And here, you again tell everyone at the Trump organization that you were starting a new job to be President Trump's personal attorney, right?
Correct.
If you look at that third paragraph, the paragraph that starts, I will be in and out of the office. We can blow that paragraph up. And you write, it is for this reason that I am truly excited to begin my new position as personal attorney to President Donald J. Trump, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you say what an honor it was. And you agree with that, right?
I do.
And that you're going to have productive and exciting times with President Trump, right?
Yes, sir.
But then you say you're going to miss everybody.
Yes.
And then give them a way to contact you, correct?
Correct.
And then we can take that down. And then you started doing legal work for President Trump, right?
Excuse me?
Well, once you changed roles, so you leave the Trump organization, you start as President Trump's personal attorney. You continue to do what you were doing in January and February of 2017, right? Helping President Trump with his personal legal issues, right?
Yes, sir.
And you had a matter with Mark Kasowitz regarding representing President Trump, right?
Yes, sir.
You and he were actually lead counsel on that case, right?
I think Mark Kasowitz was lead counsel.
Well, let's take a look at B-176 just for you, the court, and the parties. And then we can go to the next page. Actually, let's go to page 15. I'm sorry.
The purpose of this is
Take
to
a look-
show, by the way, to show that he's doing
Yeah.
legal work for the president. He claims that all the money he's got in 2017 was repayment of the loan, doubled up, plus a bonus, and whatever the cockamamie basis he has for getting paid. The point that Todd Blanche is making is you did do some legal work for him, maybe less than you normally did, but you still did because a personal attorney to the president, he's got a legal staff to handle most of the things he's dealing with. Very little personal attorney needs, but what little he did need, he used you for. But go on.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I wanted the audience to be aware as to what the nature and purpose of these questions was.
Yeah, this is brilliant stuff.
Yeah.
Take a look at page 15 and actually the bottom. Hold on one second.
Yes, sir.
So, isn't it true that both you and Mr. Kasowitz were both lead counsel on that matter?
Yes, sir.
Another lie. And that was, at the time, a relatively active matter that was taking a fair amount of your time. And it looks like Mr. Kasowitz's time, right?
Yes.
Now, do you recall discussions with, you can take that down. Do you recall in discussions with the people that were working at the White House, like Hope Hicks, working with you to find a lawyer to represent President Trump in certain matters?
I'm sorry. Can you ask that again?
Well, so one of the things that you did as President Trump's attorney was to help him find a lawyer to actually work the case, right?
One?
One of the things.
Yes.
So in the case that we just talked about with Mr. Kasowitz, you were co-lead counsel with him, right?
Yes, sir.
But in some other cases, you maybe wouldn't have handled the case yourself if it wasn't your area of expertise, but you would expect you would represent President Trump in getting a lawyer to help him, right?
Correct.
And do you recall doing that in January, February of 2017 for President Trump?
Yes.
For example, there were issues at the time with reporters potentially making defamatory statements against President Trump, right?
Yes, sir.
And you helped. That was part of your job, right? To help with that?
Yes, sir.
And you have met regularly with counsel, including Mr. Kasowitz in February as well, on not only the case you were lead counsel on, but some other matters as well, right?
Yes, sir.
And there was, just so the jury understands, to help us understand, that was a case that actually had legal filings that had to be made, right?
Yes.
So it wasn't just like a threat of litigation. There was ongoing litigation with legal filings, right?
Yes, sir.
And you were part of that.
Yes.
Your role changed. Is that fair? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay. So certainly talking about January and February, you're actively part of that, correct?
Yes.
And then the filings in March, you helped with filings, correct?
I reviewed documents. Yes.
Well, is reviewing the documents helping with the filings?
Yes, sir.
All right. Do you recall helping President Trump even serving subpoenas on government agencies, like helping figure out how to serve a subpoena on a State Department? Do you recall helping with that?
No, sir.
Well, let's take a look at B-237 and just review that for the parties and for the court. If we can just blow up the text so that Mr. Cohen can see it a little bit easier. Thank you. You can take that down. So, do you recall working with Mr. Kasowitz around the subpoenas that had been issued, including the State Department?
I received the email from them. Yes.
Well, when you received an email like that and you were President Trump's attorney, would you have known something about it?
Yes.
So that was just my question. Whether that was one of the things you were doing at that time was helping President Trump with that type of issue.
Yes, sir.
Now, in May of 2017, a special counsel was appointed named Robert Mueller, right?
Correct.
What, if anything, what, if any, effect did that have on your attorney-client relationship with Mr. Trump, if anything?
It did not.
So at some point, though, later in the year, did the fact that there was a special counsel investigating President Trump affect your relationship with President Trump?
Yes, sir.
And that's because there were false claims made by you.
The breaker doing the breaker again. Yes, sir.
Now, President Trump appointed or named Mr. Kasowitz, at least initially, to be his lawyer for that, right?
Correct.
And you were part of that process, right? Well, you were the process of selecting Mr. Kasowitz. Did you play a role in that?
I don't recall.
How did you find out about it?
I don't recall. No, sir. I don't recall.
Were you happy or indifferent that Mr. Kasowitz had been appointed as President Trump's personal attorney for that?
Probably very happy.
Because you had a good relationship with him.
Yes, sir.
And did you continue to work with Mr. Kasowitz as a representation of President Trump in connection with the Mueller investigation?
Not that I recall.
So that was a separation, right? So you were aware that Mr. Kasowitz was selected. Mr. Kasowitz was representing President Trump, and you weren't really part of that deal, right?
No, I was not.
But you were still special counsel, personal counsel to President Trump, correct?
Yes, sir.
You also did a fair amount of legal work for the First Lady in 2017, correct?
I did legal work for the First Lady.
There was an issue with Madame Tussauds, right?
Yes.
And you helped with that.
I reviewed the agreement, yes.
And reviewing the agreement is helping with that.
Yes, sir.
You also met with the First Lady on many occasions, at least in February and March and April of that year, right?
Yes, sir.
Did you meet with the First Lady in New York?
Yes, sir.
Because she was still in New York at that time.
Yes, sir.
And part of your role in meeting with her was helping her with legal issues or potential legal issues, right?
No, sir.
Well, was the Madame Tussauds a legal issue?
That was.
Was there? Do you recall being there? Do you recall there being a trademark issue that arose involving Melania during that time period?
Yes, sir.
And did you help with that situation?
I did.
And again, that's legal work you were performing for the First Lady, right?
Yes.
But you separately met with her on multiple occasions for non-legal work as well, right?
Personal matters.
And did you view that as part of your job?
Yes, sir. So who cares? The point is he's working.
Yeah. So part of your job has always been, or at least for many years, has not only been doing legal work, but helping President Trump and his family with an array of issues, right?
Correct.
And that's what a lot of lawyers do, right?
Objection.
Sustained.
The objection is that
Well,
it's calling for speculation about what other lawyers do.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what you did, right?
That's what I did, yes.
And your job was being President Trump's lawyer, correct?
Yes, sir.
So at some point, and we talked about this a little bit on Thursday, but at some point, were you advised that you shouldn't have contact with President Trump because of the Mueller investigation?
Not that I recall.
So you don't recall saying to the president that you were advised that you could not speak to President Trump in and around May of that year?
I don't recall that. No, sir.
And to be clear, the retainer agreement that you entered into with Mr. Weisselberg and
Objection.
Sustained.
the retainer agreement that you discussed with Mr. Weisselberg, okay, that led you to being paid $35,000 a month in 2017, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
Well, how much were you paid every month in 2017 from President Trump personally?
That would have been 9 checks
9 checks.
at $35,000 apiece.
And the other 3 checks came from the trust.
Objection.
Sustained.
Go on.
I'm sorry. Can you ask that again?
The other 3 checks came from the trust, correct?
You can answer.
I can answer?
You can answer if you know the answer.
Yes.
So the first check was for $70,000, which was for 2 months, right?
Yes, sir.
And then the second check from the trust was for March for 1 month, right?
Correct.
Now, you continued to get paid all 12 months, correct?
Yes, sir.
$35,000 a month.
Correct.
And that was the agreement that was struck, correct?
Yes, sir.
You also did a ton of consulting work in 2017, right?
I did consulting work, yes.
Well, did you do a little bit of it or a lot of it?
I don't know how to define a little or a lot. I had consulting clients, yes.
How many?
6 in total.
How much were you paid in 2017?
Approximately $4 million.
From these 6 clients?
Yes, sir.
Now let's start with AT&T. Was that one of your clients?
Yes, sir.
You signed with them in January of 2017. Does that sound right?
I don't recall if it was January 2017.
No problem. Can we show the witness what has been marked for identification as B188 just for the witness, the parties in the court? Take a look at that and then we can discuss it.
Yes, sir.
Does that refresh your recollection that it was January?
It does.
We can take that down. And they paid you $50,000 a month.
Correct.
For how long?
For 1 year.
So 12 months, $50,000 a month, right?
Correct.
What work did you do for AT&T?
Consulting and advisory work.
So what does that mean? What actual work did you do for them?
I advised them on the issue that was taking place where they wanted to acquire, I believe it was Time Warner.
What time period of the year was this? What time period? What time period?
So you signed.
YMCA.
There's more. There's more.
Oh, I'm sorry. So you signed with them in January. At what point were you advising them on this?
Throughout that year.
Approximately how many communications did you have with them during the year?
Oh, approximately 20.
And were those communications of all sorts, meaning email, phone calls, and in-person meetings?
Yes, sir.
So over the course of 12 months, you had 20 communications.
Yeah, 12 months. Sorry, go on.
12 months, yeah.
Yeah.
You had 20 communications with AT&T, and they paid you $600,000, right?
Bingo. Yes, sir.
And there's nothing wrong with that, correct?
I don't see it.
I'm not saying that there are. I'm just asking you.
I don't believe so.
And what is Columbus Nova?
Columbus Nova is a fund that was also a client.
When did you sign with Columbus Nova?
I believe in February of 2017.
Well, let's take a look at B180. Well, could it have been in January?
It could have been January as well.
January 25th, 2017, right?
Sounds correct.
And they paid you $80,000 a month, right?
Correct.
How long did you work for Columbus Nova?
The agreement was supposed to be for 1 year.
Well, supposed to be. Sounds like it was it longer or shorter?
Shorter.
How long did they end up cutting the agreement?
Well, it was a little more than 6 months, I believe.
How many communications did you have with them over that 6-month period of time?
More than 100.
And those 100 communications were of all sorts, emails, phone calls, in-person meetings.
Yes, sir.
Why did that relationship come to a halt?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Well, let me ask you this. There's nothing with you and or another party signing an agreement and then saying, well, we're not going to work together anymore, right?
That's correct.
By the way, you never told President Trump that you had, and we were going to go through some more than you had all these consulting arrangements, did you?
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled. You can answer.
In fact, it was Mr. Trump who introduced the CEO of AT&T to me. That's how I ended up obtaining him as a client.
So let me ask you that question again. I didn't ask you who introduced you to your clients. My question was whether along the way you told President Trump that you had that you had 6 consulting agreements.
I did not specifically tell President Trump that, no.
And, well, at some point he found out, right?
I believe so, yes.
And he was frustrated with that you had signed a deal with AT&T, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
What about Novartis? Did you have a relationship with Novartis?
I did.
They hired you in March of 2017, correct?
Correct.
And they paid you $100,000 a month, correct?
And correct.
And that was a 1-year deal.
Correct.
So you were paid $1.2 million by Novartis.
Correct.
And you testified in front of Congress that you had 6 communications with them. Is that right?
I think maybe more than that, but yes, it was not significant.
Well, if it was more than 6, but not significant, what number in your head today are you thinking?
It could be 6.
So that would mean that you were paid $1.2 million for 6 communications. That's $200,000 a communication, correct?
Correct.
And that's the deal they entered into, right?
It is.
And what I mean by that is when you enter an agreement with AT&T or Novartis or Columbus Nova, it's a consulting agreement. They can use you as much as they want, right?
Or as little, or
Or as little as they want. So if AT&T wanted to call you every day, they could.
they could have.
And under the agreement, you would have had to talk to them, right?
Yes, sir.
Same with all of them.
Same with all of them.
That's the way a retainer agreement works, right?
Yes, sir.
Meaning it's not conditioned on the quantity of work that is done.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Well, a retainer agreement with Novartis,
Objection.
I will allow it.
it's a consulting agreement.
I'm sorry?
A retainer agreement with Novartis,
Actually, you are right. Sustained.
Thank you.
Oh my
Well-
God.
what types of decisions do you think about when you're trying to figure out whether to sign with as a consultant, whether you should represent a company?
Objection.
Overruled.
I'm sorry, sir. I don't understand the question.
I mean, we talked about different prices. Novartis was $100,000 a month. Columbus Nova was $80,000 a month. AT&T was $50,000 a month. What goes into your strategy or decision making when deciding what the right number was?
Whatever I can milk out of them. That's the real answer.
It's absolutely.
It was based upon my communications with them.
Meaning both sides talked about what the expectations were, including how much to pay a month.
Yes, sir.
And there were clients that you started talking to that you ultimately didn't agree to work with.
Yes, sir.
And that happens a lot, right?
It happened quite often.
So you also had retainers with Avenue Ventures. Is that right?
No, sir.
What is Avenue Ventures?
Avenue Ventures was a gentleman who, his name is Imad Zuberi, who I had met during the course of the campaign. And the things that Mr. Zuberi was asking of me were not things that I would agree to do. Which dealt with lobbying or government relations. I was going to say they found something a lawyer would not agree to do for money, which dealt with lobbying or government relations, and so I never agreed to represent him.
So you weren't their consultant.
No, sir.
What about Korea Aerospace?
KAI, yes, sir.
Were you their consultant?
Yes, sir.
How much did they pay you a month?
I believe it was $100,000 a month
For how long?
for 1 year.
And so that's $1.2 million. Were they your client the entire year?
No, sir.
How long?
6-7 months, I believe.
So in the 6 or 7 months, how many communications did you have with them?
Approximately a dozen.
What about BTA Bank?
Yes, sir.
Was that one of your clients?
Yes, sir.
How much did they pay you a month?
And I believe it was supposed to be $150 a month.
Oh, when you say supposed to be, it sounds like they didn't pay you $150,000 a month.
No, sir.
How much did they pay you?
I believe for 2 or 3 months.
So they paid you $450,000 and then the relationship went away, or what happened?
Yes, sir.
How many communications did you have with BTA Bank in that 2 or 3 months?
Again, approximately 20 communications.
So as we talked, I think just about 6. Did you
There was one additional.
go ahead? What was the one additional?
A gentleman by the name of Franklin Haney, who, again, I had met through Mr. Trump in Mar-a-Lago, who had a nuclear facility that he had purchased from TVA, Tennessee Valley Authority. He was trying to obtain assistance with financing on the reactivation of this nuclear facility to create both jobs as well as to lower the cost of energy substantially.
How much did he pay you a month?
He paid me an initial retainer amount. I believe it was $50,000, but he had offered more. I was to receive 15% carry interest in the company if it was successful.
And what time frame did you represent him in 2017?
Toward the end.
So you had the retainer agreements that we just talked about. You had a retainer. President Trump was paying you $35,000 a month, correct?
Correct.
And then in 2018, I want to move into 2018, early 2018, when the Stormy Daniels payment leaked, correct?
Correct.
And you told multiple people when it first leaked out that President Trump knew nothing about the payment, correct?
That's correct.
Do you know somebody named Andrew Albstein?
Yes, sir.
Who is Andrew Albstein?
He's a real estate attorney.
And he's a longtime friend of yours.
Yes, sir.
Do you remember going with him in 2018 to visit somebody who was in jail by the name of Stephen Croman?
Yes, sir.
Stephen Croman was a mutual friend of the two of yours. Is that right?
I went to college with Steve Croman and continued to this day to be friends.
And so you and Mr. Croman you and Mr. Albstein went to visit Mr. Croman, who's in jail here in New York City.
Yes, sir.
And this is around the time or right after the time that the story of you making the payment had been released, right?
I'm sorry. One more time, please.
When you went to visit him in jail, it was right after the story had been leaked out that you made the payment to Stormy Daniels, correct?
Yes, sir.
And do you remember saying that insisting to both of them that President Trump knew nothing about it?
I don't recall specifically saying that, but it would have been what I would have said at that time. Yes, sir.
And do you remember saying that you had made the deal and President Trump did not know? Do you remember saying that?
No, sir.
Would it have surprised you that you made that statement at the time?
No, sir.
Do you remember saying that you had even called Melania, the first lady, and told her that President Trump didn't know about it?
No, sir.
Well, did you call the first lady and say that President Trump didn't know about it?
Not that I recall. No, sir.
But you don't recall saying that to your friend, Mr. Albstein, and the gentleman who was in prison?
Correct.
Do you remember being told at the time that you should keep that quiet, meaning keep it quiet, what you knew or didn't know about the payment?
Not that I recall. No, sir.
Well, putting aside whether you were told that, I guess you didn't keep it quiet, right?
I did not.
You spoke to, again, we talked about it a lot, but you spoke to Ms. Haberman about it and told her that President Trump didn't know about it, right?
Yes, sir.
And you said that on the record, right?
Yes, sir.
You recorded conversations with multiple reporters where you told them you didn't know, correct?
No, sir.
Do you recall a conversation with a reporter named Suzanne Kianpour with the BBC?
Yes, sir.
Do you recall recording a long conversation with her in early February about the payment?
Yes, sir.
And do you recall telling her that there is no way you had told President Trump about it at the time? Do you remember telling her that?
Sounds correct. Yes.
Jeez. Now, and you didn't tell that reporter you were recording her, correct?
No, sir.
Do you remember telling her, and again, I'm talking about Mrs. Kianpour, that your wife and kids had just found out 2 weeks earlier? Do you remember saying that?
I don't.
Well, if you said that, would it have been true?
Yes, sir.
And so just up until April of 2018, April 17th, is when the FBI raided your home, correct? Right?
Yes. April 9th.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. April 9th. You had told anybody who asked that President Trump knew nothing about the payment at that time, correct?
That's what I said. Yes.
You said that to reporters.
Yes, sir.
You said it to friends.
Yes, sir.
And until at least recently in 2018, you had said it to family members or to family, correct?
Correct.
And then April 9th, the FBI raided your home, your hotel room, apartment, TD Bank, and office, correct?
Correct.
And a week later, you went and met with a lawyer named Bob Costello on April 17th, 2018, correct?
No, sir.
No?
No.
What do you recall?
I received communication from Jeffrey Citron asking to set up a meeting with him and Bob Costello in order to discuss possible representation of me.
Right. So on April 17th, you went and had a meeting with Mr. Citron and Mr. Costello in a conference room in the hotel you were staying at, correct?
Yes, they came to me.
And it was about a 2-hour meeting.
I don't recall how long.
You said last week that you thought that they brought a retainer agreement that day. Is that right?
I believe that they brought some form of retainer agreement. Yes.
Are you sure that it was that first meeting and it wasn't several days later, like April 20 or several days after that they brought in the retainer agreement?
It could have been.
But it is early on.
Yes, sir.
Fair. Now, do you recall? Well, let me back up. After that initial meeting, is it fair to say that you have multiple communications with Mr. Costello over the next several months?
Yes, sir.
How many do you think that you had on the phone?
On telephone?
Yes, on the telephone.
10, maybe a few more.
And those would have been between like around the time that you had met with them the first time and then whenever you stopped talking to them a few months later, right?
Yeah, just bear in mind when he gets on the phone, it costs people $200,000. But I don't think he paid $2 million to Bob Costello.
I don't think so either.
In fact, I don't think he paid him a dime. He thinks that the guy worked for 10 hours and for free, and he doesn't. He was never his attorney. That's what Cohen testifies. This guy was never my attorney. Bob Costello says I was his attorney. He just didn't sign a retainer agreement. Not everyone signs a retainer agreement. This guy does. This guy spends 6 minutes and charges people basically $1 million for the 6 minutes he spends with them. But he gets 10 hours of legal work out of Bob Costello. But that guy was never his attorney. All right. Yeah, that's correct.
So after that first meeting, a few days later on April 23rd, do you remember Mr. Costello following up with you, saying that he had spoken to somebody that you had asked him to speak to? Do you remember that?
Yes, sir.
So I want to show you what has been marked for identification as B106, just for you, the parties, in the court. I'm sorry, I said 106, I meant 1006. Take a look at that email, and the top half is redacted, but take a look at the email and see if it's an email from Mr. Costello to you.
Yes, sir.
Is that an email from Mr. Costello to you on April 23rd, 11:44 a.m.?
It is.
And we offer it, part of it is redacted, the upper half is redacted.
Yes, sir.
We offer B1006.
Any objection?
No objection.
Accepted into evidence.
If we can put it up on the screen, please. If you can blow up the 2 paragraphs and then the first 4 or 5 lines. So that's an email from Mr. Costello to you on Monday, April 23rd, 2018 at 11:44, correct?
Correct.
Attorney-client privilege communication. Michael, it says, I spoke with the person you asked me to, and he said that he would find out exactly how the matter ended up in the SDNY, and in particular, who in Maine Justice approved this. Do you see that?
I do.
And who did you ask him to discuss about that?
I believe it was Rudy Giuliani.
But you asked Mr. Costello to find out from Mr. Giuliani why the case was in the SDNY and who approved it, right?
Correct.
Now, by the way, this is right after, a few weeks after the search warrant, right?
Correct.
And at that point, you really didn't know why they searched your office, hotel room, apartment, correct? You didn't know.
No.
You later found out they were looking at bank records, right?
Amongst other things.
Amongst other things, but they were looking at, part of their probable cause for the search warrant was Mr. Friedman, right?
Yes, sir.
The guy that you were in business with, not in business with, the guy that you had loaned tax medallions to for many years.
I had leased taxi medallions to him.
So if we look at the rest of that email, it looks like, well, what Mr. Costello says to you is that he thought he would have no problem tracking that down and that he might have the answer the night before, but that hadn't happened, right? So Mr. Costello is telling you that he asked the question and he's waiting for an answer back, right?
Correct.
So let's look now. If I can show you what's been marked for identification as B1008, just for the witness, the parties, and the court. Take a look at that email and tell me whether you recognize it. Now, while you're looking at it, Mr. Cohen, for reasons that they're produced, you'll notice that they're reversed. Does that make sense? Meaning the bottom email is actually sent on May 16th at 12:16, and the top email is sent at May 15th at 1:42. Do you see that?
I do.
But do you recognize an email, the top email from you to Mr. Costello, Mr. Citron, and a bottom email from Mr. Costello to you?
I do.
And the top email was sent, like I said, on the 15th, but the bottom was sent on the 16th, correct?
Correct.
We offer B1008.
No objection.
Accepted into evidence.
If we can show that to the jury and actually blow up the bottom email first, which is, sorry, can we get out of that and blow up the top email? This is an email from you to Mr. Costello, and it says, Bob, as I've stated in the past, when the right time comes, and now is not the right time, we will advance our conversations regarding this issue. Too many hands right now with all varying viewpoints and ideas, right?
Yes, sir.
You asked Mr. Costello to reach out to Mr. Ryan. Mr. Ryan is your lawyer from McDermott, Will, and Emery at the time, right?
Yes, sir.
He was representing you in the Mueller investigation, as well as the congressional.
As well as the congressional.
And the congressional investigation. And then you say to Mr. Costello that he can reach out to you, but you don't want him commenting on your behalf with anybody, correct?
Yes, sir.
We can pull that out. And then he writes back to you. Mr. Costello writes back to you the next day, May 16th, and he's trying to reassure you, correct?
Correct.
Now, At that point, they meaning Mr. Citron and Mr. Costello, they wanted to speak with you again, right?
Correct.
And you indicate that confirms you asked Mr. Costello to reach out to Mr. Ryan, right?
Yes, sir.
And then they claimed they wouldn't pester you, correct?
Correct.
So would it surprise you to learn that you actually communicated on the phone, either you calling Mr. Costello or Mr. Costello calling you 75 times?
It seems excessive, but possible.
And would it surprise you to learn that there were multiple calls that lasted longer than a half hour?
No, sir.
That you spoke over 9 hours over the course of a few months with Mr. Costello? Would that surprise you?
No, sir.
Do you remember having a phone call over Memorial Day weekend with Mr. Costello that lasted an hour and a half?
I don't recall that, if that was Memorial Day weekend.
Do you remember weekend calls that lasted a long time?
Yes, sir.
And you initiated a lot of those calls, correct?
I don't know if I initiated them or responding to a request to call him or just accepting his phone call.
Well, just try to the best of your recollection, based on your recollection, do you recall you were initiating more phone calls or Mr. Costello initiating more phone calls?
To the best of my recollection, I believe Mr. Costello reached out more to me.
Did you, and I want to make sure you understand your testimony from last week, there were those 9 hours of calls that you had. How many times did you meet with him personally?
Excuse me. Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled.
How many times, if you can recall, did you meet with Mr. Costello in person?
I believe it was once or twice.
So the 2 times you met with him and all the phone calls you had with him, you understood at that time that those were privileged communications, right?
Yes, sir.
Because you hadn't signed an engagement letter, right?
Hold on 1 second. I gotta take care of something here. Lord. I apologize here. I'm not sure where my mods are. But look, I'm very open about the whole communication thing and stuff like that. Like, I'm really good about that. But like, I saw some spam in here that I'm just like, no, that's
I
not.
hate that.
I was like, I'm just like, maybe someone pulled it out because I'm not seeing it now. All right, maybe someone pulled it. But yeah, the 3 rules. The 3 rules I have are no spam, no racism, no violating TOS. That's it. That's really it. It's really that's pretty lax. Pretty lax.
That's pretty chill.
It is very chill. I'm a big proponent of free speech as long as it's not destroying my, the chat here. So anyway, I think someone just knocked it out. All right, let's get back.
Okay. So just scroll back up just a tiny bit.
Oh, sorry.
While you're
okay.
doing that, I gotta say Barnes was right. This is turning more into the end of the Shield than anything. This guy seems like his hand was in a lot of dirty pots,
Oh yeah.
and it was,
Yeah.
and basically they were like, "Hey, do you feel the walls closing in on you?"
No, they're not closing in on him because no one's going to go after him because they want to use him to punch at Trump. So the walls are not going
Right.
to close in on him. That's part of what's gross about this whole thing is that even though this guy admits that he stole $60,000 from them or embezzled $60,000 by flat out lying to them about monies he purportedly advanced and never did, and there's no prosecution. Frankly, I don't think he stole the money. If you ask me, he didn't steal the money because I think it was part of his regular retainer. So really, he's just committing perjury, and there's not going to be anything for that either. So this is a different.
Well,
crime.
maybe it's not the walls closing in, but it seems like
credibility crumbling.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
there's people looking over his shoulder, and you would think that anybody with kind of an in here would start going, wait a minute, it seems like this bad apple, people are starting to notice that it's on top of the bushel.
Yeah. By the way, I want to clarify. I actually was talking about Rumble. It was not, but what happens is I don't see when it got deleted. So Ndug was all over it like immediately because she's just a badass moderator. But I didn't notice that it came from there. I didn't notice that, but it was actually on Rumble. So Good job, and Doug, just nipping that in the bud. The walls were closing in. That's why he flipped. That's true. Yeah, that's true. He was like, I don't want to go the way of Roger Stone. So, all right. So where were we at here?
Because you hadn't signed an engagement letter, right?
No, sir.
That doesn't mean a conversation isn't privileged.
Anticipation of potential representation.
So the fact that you had not signed an engagement letter with Mr. Costello didn't mean that those phone calls weren't privileged and didn't mean that those meetings weren't privileged, right?
Correct.
Now I'm going to show you another email, which we can show the witness, parties, and the court. Oops, I'm not seeing the next part. Oh, there you go. B1003. Do you recognize that email?
I do.
That's another email between you and Mr. Costello?
Yes, sir.
Or a chain of emails, right?
Correct.
We offer B1003.
No objection.
Accepted.
Can we put it on the screen? If we can blow up the bottom third of the email, please. This is an email on April 19th from Mr. Costello to you saying, I'm sure you saw the news. Rudy is joining the Trump legal team. I told you my relationship with Rudy, which would be very useful for you and Bob Costello. And then if we can go to the statement back. This is from you, Mr. Cohen. You say, Robert, great news for Rudy. I know I owe you a call. You've been working for lawyers all along and just now coming up for air, correct?
That's correct.
After the first time you met with Mr. Costello, Rudy was hired to represent President Trump, right?
Correct.
And Mr. Costello was telling you about that.
Well, that's why it means good news for Rudy. He's angry that Rudy's replacing him.
Yeah.
That's what's happening here. I was wondering why he's so mad at Rudy Giuliani. Rudy replaced him as personal attorney. That's why he's pissed off at Rudy. Now I got to go to Rudy to help me out with Trump, to get me a pardon from Trump. This is why this guy's brooding like a lunatic, because he's like, I was personal attorney to Trump for 9.5 years. I get whacked. Rudy replaces me, and now I'm having legal troubles. I got to go to Rudy to help me out. I can understand him saying, F this, I'm not dealing with Rudy at all. I could have totally got that. See, I never understood the whole animus as to why it is that he has this vitriol toward Rudy Giuliani. But now I'm actually better able to put myself in his shoes and appreciate why he just is never going to like Rudy Giuliani. This is the guy who replaced him.
All right. Yeah. Now I'm going to show you People's Exhibit 208. Sorry, in evidence. This was shown to you last week, Mr. Cohen. If we can just blow up the bottom half, please. And then, so this is an email from Mr. Costello to you a little bit later in time. This is June 14th, 2018, correct?
Correct.
And this is in response to you getting an email from them that had an attachment that says Giuliani on possibility of Cohen cooperating on Mueller probe. It was on YouTube, correct?
Correct.
If we can go to the next page, please, and then blow up from the middle of the page down, please. Now, here this is Mr. Costello saying to you that YouTube's something you should see, Bob. And your response back on June 14th, 11:21 a.m. was, why send this to me, correct?
Correct.
We can take that down, please. Now I'm going to show you B1013 marked for identification. Is that an email from you to Mr. Costello, same day, June 14th at 11:44 a.m.?
Yes.
No, we offer B.
Sorry.
There you go. No, that's okay.
B1013, no objection.
Accepted into evidence.
All right.
If we can put that up on the screen and just blow it up the top. This is an email from you to Mr. Costello talking about, looks like a different article that says Trump's campaign to discredit Michael Cohen is already underway, right?
Yes, sir.
That's what the title says. And you wrote to Mr. Costello, since we are sharing this morning, they are again on a bad path, right?
Yes, sir.
You were talking about President Trump and his team trying to discredit you, correct?
Correct.
And this was during that time when you had not decided whether you're going to cooperate yet, correct?
Correct.
But you decided to cooperate shortly thereafter this time, within a month or so. Is that right?
Correct.
Now I'm going to show you one more email, B1014. Take a look at that and tell me whether you recognize it. Do you recognize that?
I do, sir.
This is another email from Mr. Costello to you on June 28th.
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, we offer B1014.
No objection.
Accepted into evidence.
If we can put that on the screen and just blow up the bottom portion. So this is Mr. Costello's email to you on June 28th in response to what looks like a question from you. Is that right, Mr. Cohen?
Yes, sir.
And what you wrote is, or what he writes to you is, the answer about why they haven't brought an action challenging Mueller, his investigation, and the Michael Cohen referral investigation based on the findings of the IG Horowitz report. Do you see that, right?
I do.
So he's answering a question that you had asked about what was going on in D.C. about the Mueller case and your investigation, correct?
Correct.
And is that, we can take that down. Mr. Cohen, is that consistent with your memory of the types of things you were talking about with Mr. Costello at that time?
Yes.
Now, can you also put up that same exhibit back up, please? Exhibit 1014 and go to the second page at the top. You were also talking to him about who is going to pay for Mr. Costello, correct? And the reason why I asked that question, Mr. Cohen, is because it looks like the earlier email that we just showed you, you write to Mr. Costello, not sure what concerns, meaning what concerns you have, sir, other than the non-payment that you expressed that you told Mr. Costello about. And that was your lawyers had stopped getting paid, correct?
And McDermott, Will, and Emery.
So, in the time that you started speaking with Mr. Costello in April, and now there had been a change in whether the Trump organization was paying the lawyers, right?
Correct.
And as far as you knew at the time, they had stopped.
No, sir.
So what had happened that caused you to write to Mr. Costello, non-payment I expressed to you?
There were significant invoices that were being sent by McDermott, Will, and Emery to the Trump organization for the payment, and the payment was not being made in accordance with the invoices.
And you wanted Mr. Costello to talk with Mr. Giuliani about why that was happening. Is that right?
I expressed to him that the non-payment was becoming an issue, and yes, to let Mr. Giuliani know to pass it along to President Trump that it is becoming an issue.
All right. That wasn't my question, Mr. Cohen. It is that you wanted Mr. Costello in June of 2018 to communicate to Mr. Giuliani about the fact that the non-payment was becoming an issue, correct?
To keep him advised, yes, sir.
You asked Mr. Costello to do that, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Well, do you have any doubt that it was you who initiated that communication to Mr. Costello?
I don't recall if I asked him to reach out to Mr. Giuliani, other than I expressed it to him.
And then this is late June. Is this around the time your relationship with Mr. Costello and his law firm ends?
Yes, sir.
That you had been, like we talked about, you met with them a couple of times, you were talking to them and emailing them all the way up to this point, to this time in June, correct?
Correct.
And those are privileged communications, correct?
Yes, sir.
You were seeking advice of counsel from Mr. Costello, correct?
Yes, sir.
And he was giving you counsel as well, correct?
Yes.
But you, to be sure, you never signed the engagement letter and you never paid because you didn't sign the engagement letter, correct?
Correct.
So you testified Tuesday and today, I believe, that in 2017, you made approximately how much money, not counting what President Trump paid you?
Approximately $4 million.
So approximately $4 million you made from your consulting agreements, correct? Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
And then $35,000 from President Trump or from the trust was another $420.
As reimbursement, yes.
Well, we know what your view is about that.
Objection.
Sustained.
So how about the month after or the year? So the year after, that was 2017. In 2018, the Stormy Daniels payment that you made is leaked in early 2018, correct?
Yes, sir.
How much money did you make in 2018?
When I said approximately $4 million, it was from 2017 through the 2018 period, I believe.
So did you stop making money when you pled guilty in 2018?
Yes, sir.
So we are talking about January of 2017 through the summer of 2018, you made $4.5 million.
Yes, sir.
Was that the most money you had ever made in an 18-month period in your life?
No, sir.
How much is the most money you made in an 18-month period in your life?
More than $5 million.
In an 18-month period?
Yes, sir.
Now, in 2018, when you pled guilty, how did you make money between the time you pled guilty and the time that you published your book?
I did not.
And during that time, is it correct that you paid back a lot of your taxes?
I paid the deficiencies of the taxes before sentencing.
So that was my question. In between the time you pled guilty and the time you published your book, you said you didn't have any income, correct?
Correct.
Correct?
Correct.
And you had a lot of bills during that time, though, correct?
Yes, sir.
You paid you just said deficiencies in taxes.
Correct.
And you had to pay lawyers
Yes, sir.
and living expenses as well, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then since your podcast started and you published your book, that's when did you start your podcast?
Well, while I was on home confinement,
So that was in 2020,
2020.
the fall of 2020.
Yes, sir.
Does September sound right?
October.
And you published the book in September, same time period, correct?
Yes, sir.
So since you started your podcast in the fall of 2020 and wrote your book, how much have you made on a yearly basis until now?
In total, between the books and the podcasts, about $4 million.
So you testified last week that you made $3.4 million from your two books. Is that right?
Correct.
So are you saying you made about $600,000 from your two podcasts?
Probably more since it started.
How much more?
$1 million in total.
So that would make it $4.4 million since the fall of 2020. Does that sound about right?
Yes.
So that's over $1 million a year. Is that right?
Correct.
How else do you make money?
I have one remaining piece of real estate that has a lease on it. So the delta between the expenses on that unit and the rent.
And do you make money off of the merchandise that is sold on your behalf from your podcast?
Yes, sir.
Did you include that in the million or is that separate?
It's included.
And then you testified about the TikToks, but you haven't made significant money off that.
Correct.
So you're also, am I correct, pitching a TV show based on your life, correct?
Not pitching it, but there is a television show.
Well, who's pitching it if it's not you?
A gentleman who used to be part of the Mea Culpa podcast named Phil Alberstadt in California. He's the one that came up with the idea and asked if he can send a crew to New York to film a potential piece of work.
But that's with your permission, right?
Yes, sir.
So when I said you're pitching a TV show, I'm not suggesting you're out pitching a TV show. There is a TV show being pitched with your permission about your life, right?
Yes, sir.
And in particular about your job, your self-given title as a fixer, right?
Correct.
As a matter of fact, that's the proposed name of the show is Fixer, right?
Yes, sir.
And your expectation and hope is that if it gets picked up, you are going to make money, right?
Yes, sir.
Has it been picked up?
No, sir.
You want to take a break?
Yes.
All right, jurors, let's take our morning recess. Please remember all my instructions. I will see you in about 10 minutes.
I told you, it takes a long time to work your way through these things, right?
Yeah, sure does. Yeah.
You're doing a lot. You're doing a great job, all three of you, really. Excellent, excellent job. I know that you're doing the heavy lifting here, Ed. I appreciate it. You're doing a great job.
Thanks.
That was my plan.
Yeah.
Sandy is very devious. I just want to say that for the record.
All right. Remain seated. Come to order. Part 59 is back in session. Witness entering. Let's get
the jury,
Yeah.
please.
All rise. Jury entering.
Please be seated.
Case on trial. Continue. All jurors are present and properly seated.
Mr. Blanche, continue cross-examination.
Mr. Cohen, when we took our break, you were talking about the show, The Fixer. How long have you been working with the gentleman you described to try to pitch this show?
Approximately 3 months.
And 3 months, meaning the past 3 months.
No, sir.
When was it?
It was after it was shot, maybe 7-8 months ago. Then the next 3 months thereafter.
And are you considering working on a third book?
I am considering a third book, yes.
And have you been paid any money up front for that?
No, sir.
Are you negotiating to get paid for a third book?
No, sir.
You recently said that you're actually considering a run for Congress. Is that correct?
I did.
Is that true?
Yes, sir. Vote for me.
Vote for the crook. It's important. And did
I
you
am not a
did you
crook.
tell a news did you tell a news article, a news reporter, that one of the reasons why you think you should run for Congress is because you have the best name recognition out there?
Yes, sir. Everyone loves Michael Cohen.
Yeah. And you said that because of your work and what you've been doing over the past several years, going after President Trump, correct? That's your name recognition.
I wouldn't characterize it that way. My name recognition is because of the journey that I've been on. Oh, a terrible, terrible, terrible journey.
Oh, poor you.
Is it affiliated to Mr. So that's on you.
Oh, I didn't realize that was a question. Is it affiliated to Mr. Trump?
Yes, not because of Mr. Trump.
Well, the journey you have been on, at least for the past few years, has included daily attacks on President Trump. That's part of your journey, right, sir?
My journey is to tell my story. Yes, sir.
That's not my question. My question was whether your journey has been near daily attacks on President Trump at least since 2020.
Sure.
Sir, yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Objection.
Now, you worked as Trump's lawyer for more than what ended up being around 11, 10 and a half years. Is that correct?
Correct.
And during that time, you said in your books and you've said publicly that you believe that President Trump trusted you,
Yes, sir.
trusted your counsel.
Yes, sir.
His family trusted you,
Yes, sir.
as far as you know.
As far as I know.
His wife trusted you,
Yes.
and not just trusted you as President Trump's lawyer, but as their own lawyer, correct?
Yes, sir.
At least for those family members that you represented, correct?
Yes.
And along the way, you have a traditional attorney-client relationship with President Trump, correct?
Correct.
And in some ways, not traditional, correct?
Correct.
And in either scenario, he relied on your counsel, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Thank you.
Well, when you were working for him at Trump.org, you were acting as his lawyer, correct?
Yes, sir.
And part of your job as his lawyer was to give him counsel, correct?
Yes, sir.
And to discuss with him whatever he wanted to discuss involving legal issues, correct?
Judge, may we approach?
Sure.
They're straying now again into advice of counsel, presence of counsel.
Where are you going with this, Mr. Blanche?
Judge, there is, putting aside the advice of counsel defense, which we are not making, never made and never claimed we were going to make, he was his lawyer. There is nothing, in my view, wrong with me asking questions about the trust and counsel that they had, not because we're going.
Is what context? Where are you going with it? What is the context?
I mean, in summation, I anticipate arguing that one of the reasons he should be,
What is it?
one of the reasons his testimony should be rejected is the breach of trust that he engaged in. I have a right to establish.
You made that out. You can leave it.
What?
You made that out.
What? I don't know what the heck is he talking?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. That's why Alan Dershowitz said he saw more reversible error in one afternoon sitting there than he'd seen in 60 years as an attorney.
Unbelievable.
This is
just
crazy
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Oh, so does that mean are you gonna say that as a matter of law? Are you gonna issue as a matter of law? Unless you're gonna issue as a matter of law, he hasn't made it out. What the heck are you talking
You just keep fighting my fight, Your Honor.
about?
What was that line from the verdict? That's a great line that Paul Newman has. He says, if you're gonna argue my case for me, Your Honor, I'd appreciate it if you didn't lose it. All right. So when did you stop becoming, when do you view your attorney-client relationship with President Trump as ending?
Objection.
Sustained.
So going back briefly to the $420,000 that you were paid, the first three payments by the trust and then the remaining payments by President Trump from his personal account, correct?
Correct.
Now, the Stormy Daniels payment that you negotiated in October of 2016 was $130,000, correct?
Correct. By the way, I
And
think this question, this is crazy that this was this was objected. The objection was sustained because this is a really, really important question. It's a very important question because when is he saying that it ended? When the hell did it end? Was he not paid? According to him, was he not paid at all for any retainer services for what he did in January through the end of his relationship with Trump? Because he says it was all repayment of a loan. So was he not paid? And if he wasn't paid, was he his attorney? So when did it end? I mean, he's sitting there saying he's the personal attorney for the president, and I can't figure out when he got paid a nickel from that, according to his testimony.
Right. Yeah.
So as far as when he deems it to end, that's a very relevant question. And the fact that this was sustained, this is crazy. Like, why is that sustained? I have no idea what I don't know what the objection is.
Yeah.
Well, wouldn't it be when he pleads guilty for the Mueller investigation, and then at that point,
okay, it's clearly over at that point. Yes, I agree with you on that. But I mean, it's important to know what he himself believes is when it ended. Does he believe it ended when his house was raided? What moment, or was it in 2017? When did it end?
Well, can we check his email records and see when he changed his signature?
I don't think that would actually be proof that it ended, because I think he kept using that. He kept using that title forever. It's crazy. This is insanity.
Yeah,
this is very irksome.
All right. So now the Stormy Daniels payment that you negotiated in October of 2016 was $130,000, right?
Correct.
And the $20,000 that you paid back to Red Finch owner adds up to $150,000, right?
Correct.
The difference between that consists of the gross up and the $16,000 bonus that you claim Weisselberg said you got, right?
Yeah, correct.
Now, you testified that Mr. Weisselberg told you that this was being grossed up because you're in a 50% tax bracket, right?
Correct.
But you didn't claim that $35,000 a month on your taxes.
Objection.
Sustained.
Your Honor, may we approach?
Yes.
This has been precluded by your decision very clearly. Whatever he did or he didn't do doesn't go to the defendant's intent.
Your Honor, it is an additional $150,000 he stole from the Trump organization. If you accept his testimony, he was entitled to a reimbursement.
You can talk about stealing the money all you want. Once you start talking about filing taxes, you get into my ruling, and I had already precluded that.
Okay. So I can ask him about whether he actually stole more money from the Trump organization.
Okay.
That has been already asked and answered.
It has.
I will object to and ask. I will object to asked and answered. He made a clear record.
That's regarding the Finch payment, not the $130,000 extra.
You asked about the gross up with regards to that.
You asked it a number of times. I think it's best you just move on.
This is so aggravating.
So in a financial crimes case, so he said no, we can't look at taxes.
Can't look at taxes for the witness because the witness isn't charged with that. That I understand. That much I understand.
But I don't know. I've never heard that this was part of the no, you can't. I mean, it seems like a pretty.
All of this is nuts, really.
I mean, that seems like the more nuts about it is we're talking about a whole bunch of funny money, and nobody is saying, well, at some point of time, he pled guilty to these things, so we should have court filings that has his taxes, because prior to this, he should have, if he pled guilty, probably had this. They probably figured out that he was guilty from his taxes. So why wouldn't we be able to basically say, hey, this is what's on the federal record?
That doesn't
then-
get Trump.
Huh?
Yeah.
Well, I understand that. I'm just saying is I'm trying to unravel this because I was listening to about the 4 million, and then talking about these individual payments, including the retainer money, the 35,000. And in my head, I'm thinking, okay, but he pled guilty to crimes. And you would think that because they did all these raids and they started looking up his butt, that at some point in time there had to be in prior discussions about, hey, what is your, what's this income going in and out, right? I mean, that kind of makes sense to what he's already pled to and what's kind of culminating into this discussion. So I'm a little confused that there isn't already a record that we can kind of point to and say, see, we've already said that, he's already discussed that, that a court has already looked at this and said this is evidence.
It's just a matter of whether he's going to let him get it in, though. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't speak to the logic that the judge is employing here. You're asking me like what his logic is, and I'm telling you, you see me screaming aggravation at it. So I don't know.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you on the kaleidoscope thing. That it's like, hey, let me see what my reason for my objection is. Shaky, 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 twist. Look up at the light, and the answer is
Sustained.
Yeah, sustained.
Pretty much. I want to finish up the cross here, and we're like almost done. So
Okay.
So let's it's already almost 1:00. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to wake up early and see. I'm still not sure, by the way. Those of you who are wondering, with respect to my ungag Trump, tomorrow is the deadline. It's supposed to be argued, if I get to argue, at 2:00, and I still have not heard back from the court as to whether or not they're going to let me present oral arguments. I need to find that out in the morning. So, yeah, I'm gonna have to wake up early, which means I need to get to bed relatively soon. So I think we're going to stop after we finish up the cross, which is within the next 20 pages or so. So anyway.
All right. So
right,
I think while you were employed, I
Yeah.
can pick up right there.
Yep.
So while you were employed at the Trump Organization for the past 5 years or so, you were paid, including bonus, just over $500,000 a year.
Correct.
And the money that you've made since 2000, so the money that you've made since 2000 is a lot more than $500,000 a year.
Correct. You don't have to rush, by the way. We'll do a normal speed. You don't have to speed up.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the money that you made in 2017 when you were President Trump's personal attorney greatly exceeded the $500,000 that you were paid every year by President Trump, correct?
Correct.
Now, you talked about, and this goes back to Thursday, but you talked about the fact that you actually have a financial interest in the outcome of this case, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
Well, do you have a financial interest in the outcome of this case?
Yes, sir.
Because if President Trump is convicted, that would benefit you personally, financially, right?
No, sir.
Well, then what is your financial interest in this case?
Whether or not, when you said, do I have financial interest in this case? I may talk about it on my podcasts. I talk about it on TikTok, and they make money. And that's how I was viewing your question. Whether Mr. Trump is ultimately determined innocent or guilty is not going to affect whether I speak about it or not.
Well, I didn't ask whether it would prevent you from speaking about it. My question was, would you benefit financially from it? And this is different than what you said on Thursday, sir.
Objection.
Sustained.
The question to you today is whether a conviction benefits you financially.
Asked and answered, Your Honor.
I will allow it. You can answer it.
The answer is no.
It doesn't?
It's better if he is not for me because it gives me more to talk about in the future.
Now, you also testified on Thursday that you are mad at President Trump. You blamed him, at least in part, for what happened to you, correct?
That's correct.
You said, and we played it for the jury, that revenge against President Trump is a dish that is
Served best cold.
best served cold, correct?
Correct.
And you meant it when you said it then, correct? You meant it when you said it then.
Yes, sir.
And you meant it when you said it just now.
Yes, sir.
You also testified last week on Thursday that when you are placed under oath, but it affects your personal life, you are willing to lie, correct?
I'm sorry. Say that again, please.
You are willing to lie under oath if it affects your personal life, correct?
Sir, I'm not understanding your question.
Well, when you testified a few months ago in October in a different trial, the question was asked whether you would lie under oath if it affects your personal life, and you said yes. Do you remember that?
I do.
And then I asked you that same question on Thursday. I asked you whether it was true that you are willing to lie under oath when it affects you personally, and last Thursday you said yes. And I am just asking you one more time today.
Objection.
Sustained.
This trial affects your personal life, doesn't it?
Yes, sir.
Now, you also said to this jury, but I want to make sure that I understand, that you would lie under oath out of loyalty, correct?
Objection.
Sustained. Rephrase the question.
When you lied to Congress, you said you were lying out of loyalty, correct?
Yes, sir.
Meaning the reason why you lied is out of loyalty, and you said it is out of loyalty to President Trump, correct?
Correct.
So my question to you is just restating that. It's true that you will lie out of loyalty, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, would you, and your testimony remains the same as you gave it last Thursday, that notwithstanding everything that you have said over the years, you have specific recollections of having conversations on the phone with then candidate Donald J. Trump about the Stormy Daniels matter, correct?
Yes, sir.
No doubt in your mind.
It is no doubt.
I have no further questions.
People?
Yes. Thank you, Your Honor. May
all
we
right.
approach for
So I think this is now where they're going to get to the redirect, which I meant to. I was hoping to get there faster. It's not because of anything Ed did wrong. He was amazing, but I didn't realize that the questioning by Todd Blanche went on for so long. But yeah,
That
the
was
redirect
great to go through, though, man.
wasn't it?
That
Isn't
was-
it? Isn't
that
it
was
a
amazing.
fascinating thing? Isn't it a fascinating thing to
Yeah.
watch this? You can really, I think, picture it. You can picture everything happening there, and
I'm not a nice person.
you bitch. Yeah, but I think that you really get like such an overall flavor as to like just what a rough go of it Todd Blanche had in that courtroom, and it's just it's very very frustrating. It's very very frustrating. A lot of people look. I'm a member of the New York Bar, so I would never question the integrity of any member of the bench or the court. So no one should misinterpret this as me saying that
I'll say it.
there's anything wrong. That there's anything wrong with the integrity happening here. No one should ever take that because that's not what I'm saying. I understand that why people do draw that conclusion, and that's unfortunate. I understand why. If I was seeing this in a different court, I might be more expressive. But
Given how he's been chopped off at the knees at every turn, I'm really impressed with how restrained President Trump has been.
yeah,
Yeah.
instead of like barking, what the heck is going on here? Which he never did that. So yeah. Mike Radar says, quick cue. Every time the prosecutor objects, isn't he supposed to provide a basis for the objection? Hearsay, leading, foundation.
Yeah.
Is it legal to say objection? How can the judge rule appealable? I don't think that makes for it appealable as long as you can sort of figure out what the nature of the objection is. A couple of them I couldn't figure out what the hell they were. Like seriously, I have no idea what the hell they were. I do want to tomorrow. I don't know. I'm going to tell you that I enjoy doing these player things. I enjoy doing these reads. I think it's fun hanging out with people I never met before. Fans I think it's fun for them. I think people enjoy the reads. The problem I feel that what frustrates me about it is I think it limits my ability to engage the audience, like the viewers in general. And I don't really. That's the one drawback about these shows is I sort of feel as if I'm not really having the same opportunity to engage and I've been doing a lot of these lately. So, but at the same time, I really want to go through the whole objection that led to the outburst yesterday. But it's a little late now. We're already 2.5 hours in, so I really don't want to do it right now. But so I'm going to consider maybe I'll probably do a read through on locals. That's probably how it's going to happen. I'm probably going to do a read through of this transcript so we can just sort of assess just how quickly the objections were coming and objections sustained to see like the level of frustration. I don't know what I'm going to do with that. I'm not sure how I'm going to handle that. That's probably going to be on locals. That's at goodlogic.locals.com. Goodlogic.locals.com. While you're here, I'm at like 96,970 or so, like coming into this show. So I'm right at that 97,000 threshold to get me within 3,000 of that silver staff of a sword of 100,000. So yeah, if you could please hit like and subscribe. That's on Rumble too. But those of you, especially on YouTube, who are new here, if you could hit the like and subscribe button, I'd be much obliged. So I can hopefully cross that that precious 97,000 milestone. Anyway, I'm gonna wrap up here. Anywhere, where can people find you, Ed Morrissey?
Oh, well, thank you very much. I'm managing editor at hotair.com, so you can always go there. And I'm on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at Ed Morrissey. Just the way the name is spelled there without the space. And I'm usually hanging out on there. I lurk on Instagram. I'm there, but I don't hardly ever post anything. So really, Hot Air and Twitter are the two places you can find me.
And Janoski, where people find you?
Without the space is my Twitter handle, but I am the most non-IT guy you'll ever meet. I don't post basically anywhere.
Nice. Beautiful. Awesome. Sandy.
Right, Gluck, Mom on X.
There you go.
When I comment on your YouTube feed, I'm Will's Mutter.
Will's Mutter.
So that's probably why you didn't recognize me.
Right. That is, I was a little confused. And I didn't realize Janoski was someone else. Like I didn't make the connection from locals over there. All of a sudden he hit me on X and I was like, oh, okay. Now I make that connection. Anyway, I want to give a round of applause. If you're sitting at home, please give a round of applause to Ed and to Janoski and Sandy. You guys were phenomenal. I thank you so much for joining me. God willing, I'll keep you updated tomorrow on locals as to whether or not I'm going to get in for oral arguments. So, and if I'm not in for oral argument, I'm much more likely to do locals. If I do go in for oral argument, it's probably going to eat up the time that I would do locals. But I will keep you posted first there. If you want to support me on my efforts to ungag Trump, my whole lawsuit against Judge Merchan to try and get that gag overturned, please visit givesendgo.com/ungag Trump. And you can check my papers out over there. I thank you all for joining me. No matter what they tell you, no matter how hard they sell it, whatever ketchup they put on it, do not eat the bugs. And as always, good night and Godspeed. Oh wait, I gotta just check Rumble really fast. Just make me 100% sure. I think I'm good there, and I never checked. I'm good over there. Yeah, okay, we're good. The good night was fine, and the Godspeed was also perfect. Good night.
Peace.